The morning before the college entrance exam. The sky hung low and bruised with clouds. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air was thick with the promise of a storm. And 1 week before the college entrance exam, the homeroom teacher, Yuchinga, called me into her office. Z, you're meticulous. Help me tally the list of cars for the exam transport. On her desk lay last year's school transport plan. A proper tourist bus, 2 drivers, a pre-registered route, drinking water, motion sickness, pills, a first aid kit, and a teacher accompanying the bus. The cost per person was $31. I asked, "Teacher, what if the parents disagree?" Yuchinga rubbed her temples. "This is voluntary. You're just telling all notifications will be logged in the group chat." At the time, I didn't realize that the word logged would later save my life. That evening at 8, I sent the route license plate pre-registration, driver qualifications, and cost breakdown into the parent group. Within a minute, the avatar of Peo's mother, Jiangman, popped up. Her profile picture was a photo of her and her son, both in matching white shirts, with the caption, "Baby, charge toward China," and Peking University. The first voice message in a syrupy voice, 301 per person. Baby would be scared to tears just hearing that. The second voice message, even shriller. "Our baby has never been able to sit on a bus since he was little. Why should all the children suffer along with him?" The third voice message directly called me out. "Suanzi, are you familiar with the transport company charging a fee right before the exam? Baby's mommy can't help but think too much." The group went silent for a few seconds. Then a parent sent a question mark. Another said, "30 isn't expensive, right? A taxi would cost more." Jen Men immediately replied, "It's not about the money. It's about the principle. Baby wants to be comfortable and happy, not crammed into a stinky bus, dizzy and vomiting." She added, "And Sanzi is just a student who gave her the authority to arrange the cars." The phone screen blazed, blindingly bright. At that moment, I felt a cold stone lodge itself in my stomach. Yuchinga explained in the group, "Dear parents, the exam transport is a recommended school plan. Participation is voluntary. Sanzi is only assisting with the tally. She is not involved in any fee collection." Jiang Man sent a hand-over-mouth laughing emoji. "Don't be upset, teacher. I'm just worried about the kids. How about we vote? Democratic decision." The next second, a voting link appeared. Cancel Sansa's arranged exam transport. There were only 2 options: agree to cancel and disagree to cancel. There was no voluntary participation option. I stared at the screen, my fingertips numb. Gem Man sent another voice message. "Baby says he believes no one wants to be a sucker. Right." One by one, parents clicked agree. 1-3-12-20. My name hung in the voting title like a notice pinned to a public board. You can message me privately. Don't reply. Let the teacher handle it. But Jiang Man insisted on it. I in the group Suanzi, don't hide. Baby is still waiting for your apology. Then another message. If you don't say anything, Auntie will assume you admit your arrangement was inappropriate. The next day, during morning reading, the classroom was noisier than usual. Peo sat in the first row, twirling a pen, smiling as if he hadn't woken up. A boy teased, "Class monitor 30 you on ahead. Are you going to issue us receipts?" Another chimed in, "Haven't even taken the exam yet, and you're already learning how to make money." I placed my English test paper on the desk. The cost breakdown is in the group. If anyone has questions, ask the teacher. As soon as I finished, Pio slowly lipped up. "Sanzi, don't be so fierce." He mimicked his mother's tone, dragging out his words. "Baby just can't sit on a bus. What's baby's fault in that?" The whole class burst into laughter. I saw Shin Chiwi in the back roll lower her head. Her mother had clicked disagree to cancel last night. The girls next to her exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "Why bother offending Peo? He's the top of the grade." Another said, "Auntie Jen knows people in the Education Bureau. She sat at the main table at the last parent-teacher meeting, and Sanzi really thinks she's in charge just because the teacher asked her to tally." The countdown on the blackboard read 7 days. The red chalk characters looked like a wound. After the first period, Yuchinga called me into the hallway. Her voice was very low. There are too many objections from the parents. The school doesn't want to cause a scene before the exam. The bus is can-led. I froze. What about the students? Who wanted to take it? The school will send a notice advising everyone to arrange their own transport to the exam center. Parents will be responsible. Yuking his eyes held exhaustion. Z, this isn't your fault. But for now, this is the only way. At the office door, Jen walked in on high heels. She was carrying a bag of imported fruit, her face beaming. Teacher, you've worked hard. I brought some fruit for baby's class to boost their brains. Then, as if she had just noticed me, oh, son is here, too. She handed the bag to you. China. Then turned to me. Kids make mistakes, and they need to learn to accept criticism. Auntie isn't targeting you. She just doesn't want you to lead the whole class into a ditch. Yuking frowned. Mother Pei, please watch your wording. Jen blinked. My wording is very gentle. Baby always says my voice is soft. People in the hallway stopped to watch. She raised her voice. And besides, I've already found a solution. Baby said he wants a fun ride. So, I booked an internet celebrity sightseeing train. Open top, cheap, and stylish. Everyone's going to love it. The rain hammered against my window, each drop a tiny fist pounding on the glass. I lay still for a moment, my heart thudding in my chest, the sound of thunder rolling across the sky like a warning drum. It was 5:30 in the morning on the day of the college entrance exam. I took a slow breath, forcing my limbs to move. The air was thick, with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and makes your clothes feel heavy. I pulled on my jacket, checked my transparent file folder one last time. Admission ticket, ID card, pencil case, all there. My mother had already left for the hospital, her shift starting before dawn. The house felt empty, the silence broken only by the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. I grabbed my umbrella and stepped out the door. The street was a river of gray water pooling in the cracks of the pavement. I walked toward the bus stop, my shoes already soaked through. The rain was cold, biting at my ankles, but I kept my pace steady. 2 hours early. I told myself, I have time. Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, a red tourist train, with blue and white striped awnings sat idling on a popular street. G-Man stood beside it, her phone held high, filming the scene. Her voice was bright, almost musical, cutting through the drizzle. All right, my little babies, come on. Mama's here to take you to your victory ride. Wave at the camera. Say college entrance exam. Here we come. The students huddled under umbrellas, some laughing, some shivering. Peo climbed into the front seat, his grin wide, his energy bar tucked into his pocket. He leaned back, letting the rain miss his face. Mom, this is so cool. The rain makes it even more romantic. Young man laughed, her eyes crinkling. Of course, baby. Mama knows best. Now, everyone, get on. We have a schedule to keep. The train checked to life, its engine coughing out a puff of smoke. The wheels squealed against the wet asphalt as it pulled away from the curb, heading toward the Riverside Auxiliary Road. The students inside cheered, their voices muffled by the powdering rain. Some held up their phones, snapping photos of the blurred cityscape through the rain-streaked windows. But I was already on the bus, my forehead pressed against the cold glass. The windows were fogged up, the world outside a smear of gray and green. I watched the raindrops raise each other down the pane, my mind drifting to the Riverside Auxiliary Road. The image of that low-lying road flashed in my head. Water pooling, tires slipping, the train's open sides offering no shelter. I pulled out my phone. The class group chat was silent. The parent group was buzzing with young men's updates. She had posted a video of the train, the caption reading, "Rain or shine, my babies are unstoppable. Lucky train. Here we go." I typed a message, my fingers trembling slightly. The Riverside Auxiliary Road is low-lying. Heavy rain could cause flooding. Please be careful. I hit send. The message sat there unread for a long moment. Then Jan's private chat lit up. Sons, are you trying to curse my child on the day of the exam? Do you have no shame? You're just jealous, because no one wanted your stupid bus. If you say one more word, I will report you for bullying. I mean it. Her voice was sharp, each word a needle. Behind her, I could hear Peo's laugh. Light and careless. Mom, just ignore her. I need to review my essay quotes. I stared at the screen. The rain outside the bus. Window blurring into a solid sheet. The bus lurched forward, and I gripped the handrail. My knuckles white. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The train continued along the Riverside Auxiliary Road. The rain was coming down harder now, the drops bouncing off the pavement like tiny explosions. The driver, a man in his 50s, with a cap pulled low, squinted through the windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up, their rhythm frantic. "Hey, is this road safe?" one of the students asked, her voice thin. Yulman turned, her smile fixed. "Of course it is. The driver knows what he is doing. Just relax and enjoy the ride. Think of it as an adventure." But the train was slowing. The wheels were losing traction on the slick surface. The driver cursed under his breath, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. The water was rising now, creeping up the sides of the train, seeping through the gaps in the floorboards. "Mom, my feet are wet," Peo said, his voice losing its bravado. Jan Man's smile faltered. She looked down. A thin layer of water was pooling around her shoes, dark and cold. "Don't worry, baby. We'll be there soon. Just a little longer." But the train stopped. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. The students fell silent, their faces pale in the dim light. The rain continued to fall, relentless, unforgiving. I was still on the bus watching the city slide by. The bus driver announced the next stop, and I stood up, my bag slung over my shoulder. I was early. I had time, but my heart was heavy, a weight pressing down on my chest. I stepped off the bus, the rain soaking through my umbrella. I walked toward the exam hall, my footsteps splashing in the puddles. The building loomed ahead, gray and silent, a fortress of hope and fear. Behind me, somewhere on the flooded Riverside Auxiliary Road, a red train sat stranded, its passengers huddled together, their dreams hanging in the balance. And in the parent group, Jang Man's last message glowed on the screen. "Don't worry, everyone. Mama will fix this. Just stay calm." The hospital had already taken my mother away. On the table, a thermal lunchbox, and a note remained. "Z, don't be afraid. Study on the exam." I changed into dry clothes, double-checking my admission ticket, ID card, and stationery pouch one more time. At 6:10, Sheeny sent me a message. "My dad's driving me. The roads are flooded. Where are you?" "Just left the house. At the entrance of a neighborhood." The wind flipped my umbrella inside out. The bus stop was packed with people. The route I had checked earlier showed a 15-minute delay. Rainwater seeped into my shoes, soaking through my pant legs. At 6:40, I boarded the bus. As soon as the bus turned onto the main road, the parent group chat started flooding. Jen Men posted a short video. Children in transparent raincoats sat on a little train shouting slogans. Top the list, "Baby Victory." In the frame, Pio held a bouquet of sunflowers, grinning with bravado. Jang Man's voice drowned out the rain. "Our babies are off, all pretty for the college entrance exam. Below, a flood of parent likes. Such a vibe. Wish I'd let my kid ride. Sister Jang arranged it so well." I flipped my phone face down and closed my eyes, reciting a poem from memory. At 7:20, the bus arrived near the exam site. Traffic police directed at the intersection. Teachers from the school stood at the gate holding umbrellas. Yuking saw me and hurried over. "Z, are you cold? Hurry inside." She handed me a towel behind her. Shin-Chi and Zashibi had also arrived. Before entering the exam hall, phones were turned off and bagged together. The last thing I saw was the parent group still stuck on Jang Man's sticker. "Baby's almost there. Study as can be." 15 minutes into the Chinese exam, the rain outside suddenly intensified. The essay prompt was printed on the test paper. I had just written the first line when hurried footsteps echoed. In the hallway, the invigilator opened the door, stepped out, and returned quickly. Her face was grim. A classmate in the back row whispered softly, "What's wrong?" The invigilator tapped the desk. "Continue answering." The tip of my pen froze on the paper at the end of the corridor. Someone was crying out, "Teacher, please let us in." That cry was swallowed by the rain, but seeped through the crack in the door. We didn't mean to be late. We have our admission tickets. Teacher, please. The invigilator walked to the door and closed it tightly. No noise during the exam. All the pen sounds in the exam hall went chaotic. I forced myself to look down, but the essay grid turned into a blur of black lines. Exam rules. No entry allowed 15 minutes after the start. That wasn't something a teacher could change. With a soft heart before the math exam. The second one. My phone hadn't been returned yet. In the closed rest area, Shinchao's face was as white as a ghost. Z, it's the little train. Something happened. Her dad had found out. Outside the school gate, the storm had knocked down a road sign. The little train had deterred along the Riverside Auxiliary Road, and halfway the waterlogged road stalled it. The tarp was blown off by the wind, and the kids were soaked through. The driver made them get out and push, but the water on the roadside was up to their calves. Someone fell, and the admission ticket pouch got wet by the time the traffic police and parents arrived. The Chinese exam had already been going on for over 20 minutes. My throat tightened. How many didn't get in? Shinua bit her lip. A dozen or so. Beside her, Zashiba's face was dark. Peo didn't get in either. Those words hit like a stone dropped into water. Top of the grade. Jenmen's baby missed the first exam. After the afternoon exam ended, the school gate was chaos. Crying. Shouting. The clutter of umbrellas all crammed together. As soon as I stepped out, Jiang Man grabbed my arm. Her hair was soaked. Makeup smeared across her face. Eyes red. And terrifying. Sanzi. She screamed. Why didn't you warn us? I stumbled as she yanked me. Yinga rushed over. Auntie Pei, let go. J-Men clung to me like a vice. You knew it would rain. You knew the Riverside Road was dangerous. Why didn't you stop us? The surrounding parents all crowded, and someone cried out in agreement. She was the one who can lead the bus first. If she hadn't messed everything up, we wouldn't have switched to the little train. My kid's Chinese exam is ruined. Who's responsible? I winced from the pain. The bus was cancelled by your vote. The little train was organized by Auntie Jiang. Gem Man slapped me across the face. A ringing filled my ear. The umbrella fell, and rain instantly soaked my hair. She pointed at my nose. Her voice shrill. You still dare to argue. You're a student. Why did you interfere? With the transport? If you hadn't brought up the bus first, how would my baby have been harmed by you? Peo stood behind her. His lips were purple, wrapped in a hotel towel, but his eyes were locked on me. Sanzi, are you satisfied now? At that moment, my chest felt like someone had pushed me underwater. Yuking has stepped in front of me. Enough. All the notices are in the group chat records. Young men cried even louder. Can records make my baby retake the Chinese exam? He could have gotten into Tsinghua or Peking. Now it's ruined. Other parents, whose kids hadn't made it, and started shoving. Compensate for their futures. She has to give the kids an explanation. The school security guards pushed through. My phone was returned by the exam site teacher just then. As soon as I turned it on, messages exploded. Class group, parent group, short video platforms, unknown numbers at the top, a local video notification. The headline was sharp. Female student organizes transport, then cancels at last minute, causing over 10 examinees to be late in rainstorm. Parents collapsed, demanding accountability. The cover showed young man kneeling in the rain holding Pajeo, with red text beside it, top of grades college dream shattered. The first comment on the video, who is this song, Z? Come out and apologize. Jam Men grabbed another parent's phone and shoved the camera in my face. Say it to everyone. Are you responsible? Rainwater dripped down my chin in the lens. The slap mark on my face was shockingly red. Paid point. Say something. Jiang Man pushed the phone closer. Her nails dug into my school uniform sleeve as if trying to nail me into the frame. Yuking reached up to block the camera. And tip Pei. The kid just finished the exam. Don't affect the next one. Jen Man's voice cracked from crying. The aftermath hung in the air like a blade. Afterward, my baby's Chinese exam is gone. What afterward is there? Pei suddenly clutched his chest and crouched down. Mom, I'm cold. My head hurts. Jan Man lunged toward him in an instant. Baby, don't be afraid. Mommy will get justice for you. Mommy won't let that evil sister ruin you. The words evil sister dropped like a stone into still water. The gazes around me shifted, hardened, sharpened. Someone held up a phone recording. Is that her? Looks so obedient, but her heart's this black, daring to mess with something as serious as the college entrance exam. She had tried to push through the crowd, but her father grabbed her arm. Don't go over there. Don't stir up trouble. That scene stunned more than the slap had. Zusher propped his umbrella and stood beside me, his voice cold as frost. That video is not edited the way you're making it out to be. Jamman's head snapped up. You want to bully my baby, too? Zup pulled out his phone. I have group chat records here. Before he could finish, a parent rushed over and knocked the phone out of his hand. The screen smashed into a puddle on the ground. Don't try to fool us with fake stuff. The scene unraveled completely. Security guards and traffic police pushed through to separate the crowd. Yuking pulled me into the school gatehouse. The door slammed shut, but the curses outside still burrowed through the walls. She looked at my face, her eyes reening. Does it hurt? I shook my head. Teacher, the records are still there. Yuking nodded. They are the school group, the parent group, my private chats, all of it. Don't be afraid. Outside. Young man's cries kept rising. Songzi's hiding. She knows she's guilty. The school leadership arrived, but their first words weren't meant to comfort me. The vice principal looked at Ichinga. Stabilize the public opinion first. Don't let this affect the exams tomorrow. And the day after. Ichinga's face went pale. Z was hit. The vice principal frowned. The priority now is that over a dozen kids missed their Chinese exam. The parents are understandably emotional. Songzi don't respond online for now. I stared at him, so I just let them say I caused it. He avoided my eyes. The school will investigate, but you're also a test taker. Focus on the exam through the gatehouse window. Young man held up her phone. Live streaming everyone. My baby's shivering from the cold. The school's making the one who hit apologize, but won't let the one who caused the harm come out. The comments scrolled in a blur. Heart goes out to the baby. That girl needs to be expelled. Check if she tipped kickbacks from the bus company. Yuking's hands trembled with rage. She's spreading lies. The vice principal lowered his voice. Teacher, there's an exam tomorrow. Don't add fuel to the fire. That night, I got home to find my mother already waiting at the door. When she saw the mark on my face, she froze solid. Who hit you before I could answer? My phone buzzed again. Unknown numbers called one after another. Your song, Z. You ruined people's lives, and still dared to take the exam. People like you don't deserve to go to college. How did your parents raise you? My mother snatched the phone and hung up, her fingers white-knuckled. Then came the pounding on the door. Sanzi, come out through the peephole. I saw two strangers holding phones, with a woman from our building standing beside them. This is the house. Her mother works at the hospital. My mother pushed me into my room and locked the door behind her, her hand shaking. Outside, the banging grew heavier with each blow. The next day for the science comprehensive exam, I walked into the testing hall with a low fever. The slap mark on my face was hidden behind a mask, but I could still feel the other candidates sneaking glances at me. 10 minutes before the exam started, the proctor paused while checking my ID. She leaned in and whispered, "Don't let it affect you." I nodded, pressing my thumb into my palm. When the test paper was handed out, the first multiple-choice question was a familiar format. But as my pen touched the paper, those shouts from outside flooded my mind. Doesn't deserve to go to college. Troublemaker expelled. I took a deep breath and circled the question number again. By the time the bell rang, my back was drenched in sweat. Leaving the exam hall, Yuking was waiting at the stairwell. Z, your mother called the police. My heart tightened because of last night's door pounding and the hit at the school gate and the online rumors. Yuchinga pressed a cup of hot water into my hands. As for the school, the vice principal said to let the parents calm down first. But I've copied all the materials. Her voice was soft. Don't worry. The teacher won't let you take the blame. A commotion rose from downstairs. Young man was back. This time, she wore sunglasses and held a stack of printed papers. Parents, sign this joint petition. Demand the school discipline, revoke her outstanding graduate status, and compensate the affected candidates' families, someone nearby asked. How much can her family pay? Jen Man let out a cold laugh. If they can't pay, make her repeat a year. Let her sit through the exams again to atone for her sins. My steps faltered. Yuking has stepped in front of me. Mrs. Pei, you don't have the authority to demand a student's punishment. Jiang Man pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen, but filled with venom. Teacher, you're so protective of her. Did you get a cut of that bus money? 2. The air went dead silent. Yuking's face turned ashen. 4. The first time I heard my own voice tremble. Don't slander my teacher. Young Man looked at me. Her smile thin. Slander? Then explain it. Why did the bus company refund the deposit the moment you can led? Who paid it up front? Where did the money go? A parent chimed in immediately. Yeah. Who put up the deposit? Did they still deduct money even though no one rode? I always thought that 30 yuan was fishy. I pulled out my phone. The bus company refunded the school account. The invoices and refund slips are all here. Gemmen cut me off. Who knows if you two cooked this up together? She shoved the papers into another parent's hands. Sign it. We need the school to give us an answer today. Peo sat in a car outside the school gate. The window rolled halfway down. He was wrapped in a jacket, his face pale. When he saw me, he suddenly spoke. Sanzi. Everyone turned. His voice was, if you had insisted on the bus that day, and not let my mom cancel it, I wouldn't have missed the Chinese exam. Those words nailed every accusation back onto me. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer. The air in the police mediation room was thick with tension, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry hornets. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, some burning with accusation, others flickering with uncertainty. Peo, your mom started the voting in the group, and you were right there cheering her on. Don't you remember? Peo's eyes reened instantly, a flesh creeping up his neck as if the blood vessels were rebelling against the memory. His voice cracked. When he spoke, I was just listening to my mom. I'm a victim. 2. Jan Man lunged forward, wrapping her arms around him in a theatrical embrace, her fingers digging into his shoulders like claws. Baby, don't cry. They forced you into this. It's not your fault. The parents erupted like a pressure cooker, blowing its lid. What do kids know? Songzi started all this. She can still go to college after the exam. What about our children? We can't let her off easy. A man in a black raincoat charged forward, his fist clenched around a plastic water bottle, the liquid sloshing wildly inside. You ruined my daughter's Chinese exam. The bottle arced through the air, aimed straight at my head. Then Zoashibi was there, moving faster than thought, his body intercepting the blow. The bottle slammed into his shoulder, with a dull thud before, cluttering to the floor, rolling in a lazy circle. He lifted his head, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl that cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. The police are here. Behind the crowd, blue and red lights pulsed through the rain, cutting through the downpour like a heartbeat. Inside the mediation room, Jen Man's sobs were louder than anyone else's, her voice trembling with practiced anguish. Officer, I admit hitting her was wrong, but I'm a mother. She pressed her palms against her face, her words muffled, but deliberate. My son was ranked first in his grade. His mock exams were over 700 points. Now his Chinese exam is ruined. His whole life is destroyed. The officer turned to me, his expression unreadable. State your case. I slid my phone across the table. The school bus for the college entrance exam was a school suggestion. Voluntary sign-up. I was only responsible for tallying names. The parent group had the route, cost breakdown, and driver qualifications posted. The vote was initiated by Aunt Zhang, and the mini train was her own organization. Jen's voice shot up like a siren. You're lying. You arranged the bus to stir up everyone's anger. The officer tapped the table one at a time. Yuking placed printed documents on the table, her movements calm and precise. This is the school notice. This is the complete parent group chat log. This is the fleet's qualification and refund receipt. The refund went back to the school account. No student handled any money. Uncle Tang arrived, his raincoat still dripping, his hair plastered to his forehead. We're a licensed passenger transport company. We inspected the vehicle the day before the exam. When the school canceled, I processed the refund according to procedure. S never touched a single cent. Jen Man's face stiffened, a flicker of panic crossing her features. Another parent refused to back down. What about the mini train? If she knew it was dangerous, why didn't she call the police? I met his gaze. The day before the exam, I warned the group about the heavy rain risk and flooding on the Riverside Access Road. The officers scrolled through the screenshots beneath my warning. Gemman's reply was clear as day. The weather forecast scares people every day. Baby says, a mini train in the rain is more romantic. The room fell silent for a few seconds, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a fog. Jen Man gritted her teeth. I was comforting my child besides the mini. Train driver said it was fine. How was I supposed to know something would go wrong? The officer pressed on. Which company did you contact for the mini train? Jem Man's eyes darted away. It's that one near the trendy street. The boss's surname is Luo. Does it have an operating license? A charter contract? Is the vehicle legally allowed on the road? Her voice dropped to a whisper. We agreed verbally. The contract hadn't been signed yet. The parents, who had missed the Chinese exam, turned pale. Sister January, you said everything was in order. You said the driver knew the route, and that the access road would only take half an hour. Young man's eyes welled up instantly. I was just trying to save money to make the kids comfortable. Everyone agreed. It wasn't just me riding it. Someone slammed the table. But you found the car, and the money was transferred to you. You collected from 21 of us. Young man whirled toward me, her voice sharp. Songzi, don't get too cocky. You got me attacked online. I'll see you too. The officer lipped up. Currently, the video circulating online was posted by you, with a title and caption targeting Suanzi. Is that correct? Yen manas mal taradend. That's just how Nizans interpreted it. Yuking produced another screenshot. In her live stream, she explicitly said, Sanzi ruined my baby's college entrance exam. Jen Man fell silent. The door opened. A traffic officer entered. With an accident report, the mini train driver is here. Boss Lil walked in, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he tried to distance himself from the mess. Officer, I told her. I said not to go in the heavy rain. I said this wasn't a proper exam transport vehicle, only for short-distance sightseeing. Gem Man shot up from her seat. You're lying. Boss Lu's voice rose in desperation. The chat logs are right here. She said her kid liked taking photos. Wanted an open top. Wanted it cheap. Wanted it flashy. She said if anything happened, the parents would take responsibility themselves. He placed his phone on the table. The screen displayed a voice-to-text transcription of Jiang Men's messages. Clear and damning. Baby doesn't want to take the bus. It smells bad. Get me a mini train. Preferably open top. It'll look good on social media. Don't bother with the paperwork. It's not like we're going on a long trip. 20 per kid. I've got a lot of sign-ups. Give me 15. And the difference is my cut. Several parents turned to stare at her. Jen Man's face went white. Difference. A mother's voice rose to a shriek. Jan Man, didn't you say you weren't making a single cent? Jan Man stumbled backward. I didn't. I just collected an organization fee. Buying raincoats and energy bars costs money, doesn't it? Boss Lu cut in immediately. The raincoats were my gift. The energy bars were hers. I only charged 15. The parents erupted. I transferred you money for 26 people. You profited off our children's exams. My daughter missed her Chinese exam. And you're talking about organization fees. Jen Man waved her hands frantically. It's not about the money. The important thing now is that Song Z made the kids late. The officer's voice was firm. The evidence shows that Song Z did not organize the mini train or collect any fees. You posted false videos and live streams inciting online harassment, which constitutes defamation. The assault will be handled separately. J-Man's tears fell on cue. What about my son? Who's going to take care of my son? Pei stood in the doorway, silent until now. When you heard about the price difference, his face flushed crimson. Mom, you lied to me. Jen Man lunged toward him, reaching out. Baby, Mommy did everything for you. Peo shoved her hand away. You said the mini train was safer than the bus. You said Suanzi was trying to rip us off. Jen Man's voice softened, desperate. and pleading, "Baby, listen to me." The room fell silent as the weight of those words settled like a stone dropped into still water. "Baby, be good. How could Mommy ever hurt you? Mommy just wants you to be comfortable." Peo took a step back. His voice was flat, hollow, devoid of emotion. "I didn't take the Chinese exam." Those 4 words shattered Jiang Man completely. She spun around, her fingers stabbing through the air toward me. "It's all your fault if you hadn't posted about the bus. My baby wouldn't have fought me about not taking it." I met her gaze, my voice steady. "You said in the group chat that he couldn't handle the bus." Jiang Man froze, her mouth opening, but no sound coming out. Yuking flipped open the screenshots, spreading the first voice-to-text transcript on the table. "Our baby has never been able to handle long bus rides since he was little. Why should all the other children have to suffer? Because of him." Peo stared at those words, his lips trembling. "When did I ever say I couldn't handle the bus?" Young Man's eyes darted. Panicked. "You threw up in the car. When you were little." "That was elementary school field trip." His voice cracked, rising sharply. "I never once said I wouldn't take the bus this time." No one spoke in the mediation room. The cloth that had covered the truth for days, the 8,000-word thread of lies, was finally ripped away by his own hands. Jiang Man hadn't listened to her son's opinion at all. She simply couldn't bear the thought that the entire class's exam transport arrangements weren't under her control. She was afraid that a 31 bus would diminish her status as the most capable parent. Afraid that I, a student, would gain recognition in the group chat. Afraid that her baby wouldn't be the center of everyone's attention. So, she fabricated "the baby can't handle the bus." So, she started the vote, posted my name. So she found the open-top mini train cheap photogenic, and guaranteed to earn praise from all the parents. As for safety, as for the rainstorm, as for being late for the college entrance exam, she covered it all, with a single phrase: "The baby is happy." Peo's face shifted from anger to confusion, then to a hollow emptiness. "Mom, why did you do this?" Jiang Man opened her mouth, but no sound came out. A mother, whose daughter had missed the Chinese exam, rushed forward and shoved her hard. "You ruined more than a dozen kids. Not just your baby." The police officer immediately stepped in, restraining her. Jiang Man stumbled, grabbing onto a chair, still crying. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted the kids to have a good time." Lu Lao muttered under his breath. "I also said not to take the train in the rainstorm." Those words were like a spark dropped into oil. The parents swarmed Young Man, shouting, "Refund, compensation, public video apology. My daughter caught a fever from the rain. You're paying her medical bills." The police officer slammed the table, trying to restore order. In the chaos, Jiang Man suddenly rushed toward me. Her knees hit the floor. With a thud. Auntie was wrong." She grabbed my pant leg, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "Please just say a word for Auntie." "Okay, if you say you won't pursue this, the internet won't curse my baby anymore." My mother stepped in front of me, her voice cold and trembling. "Let go." Jiang Man didn't let go. My baby can't have a stain on his record. He still has to go to college. He already lost his Chinese exam. That's pitiful enough. You can't ruin his reputation." I looked down at her hand, gripping my leg. "I didn't ruin him." Jiang Man's head snapped up. "Then why won't you forgive me?" Before I could answer, reporters pushed through the entrance of the police station. Microphones raised. "Which one of you is S?" The flash went off just as Jiang Man was still kneeling at my feet. I hadn't called the reporters. Jiang Man's live stream had blown up so badly that local media had tracked her all the way to the station. The vice principal rushed in, his face even paler than it had been that morning. "Stop filming everyone. The kids still have exams to take." The reporter turned the microphone toward him. "It's been circulating online that a student from your school privately organized transport, causing over a dozen students to be late. Has the school verified this?" The vice principal wiped his sweat. "We're still investigating." Yuking has stepped forward, without hesitation. "There's already complete evidence. Student Sanzi was not the organizer, nor did she collect any fees." The vice principal grabbed her arm. "Teacher Yu Yuking shook him off. "If we don't clarify this now, more than just the kids who missed Chinese will be destroyed." She handed the materials to the reporter. The school recommended standard buses, with voluntary sign-ups. A vote initiated by some parents Ken led that plan. The subsequent mini-train was organized privately by parent Jiang Man, and has nothing to do with Sans. The reporter flipped through the documents quickly. There's a chat log here showing Jiang Man collecting a price difference. Lu Laoben nodded eagerly. Yes, I cooperated with the investigation. The camera swung toward Jiang Man. She had been kneeling, begging for my forgiveness just moments ago. Now she stood up abruptly, smoothing her hair. Everyone don't misunderstand. I collected the difference to buy things for the kids. A parent roared. What did you buy? The raincoats were freebies from the vendor, and the energy bars were leftovers your son didn't want. The reporter pressed further. Does the mini train have the proper road transport permits? The traffic officer spoke. The vehicle is a modified scenic area sightseeing electric cart. It is not permitted to operate as a school transport vehicle on city roads. The driver and vehicle have been dealt with according to the law. Those words hit John Mann like a physical blow. She staggered about to cry again when her phone rang. The screen showed baby's dad. She answered. Speakerphone on a man's furious voice filled the entire mediation room. Young man, have you lost your mind? The parent group chat. And your messages have spread to my company. You used your kid's college entrance exam to pull off some influencer-style mini-train stunt. And you even skimmed money off it. Yenman skriket. You're yelling at me. Our baby is in this state. And you're yelling at me. The man laughed coldly. Pagio just called me. He said he never asked for that mini-train. You wait until I get home. We'll settle this then. The line went dead. Pio stood at the door, his eyes hollow and gray. He looked at me, his lips moving silently before he finally spoke. Sanzi, I'm sorry. G-Man reacted as if she'd been electrocuted. Baby, why are you apologizing to her? You're the victim. Peo shouted back, his voice cracking. I'm a victim. Because of you. His voice broke completely. You had to show off in the group chat. You had to make the whole class listen to you. You called me baby until everyone made fun of me. And you still think you're a great mother. Gem Man stood frozen in the mediation room. Every parent watched the mother and son. Pei grabbed his own hair, pulling at it. I didn't want some flashy mini train. I just wanted to take my exam normally. Those words made several parents burst into tears. My eyes stunned too. Not for Pio, but for those classmates who had clutched their exam admission tickets, crying in the rain. The air was thick with unspoken regrets. Some of them had simply trusted the arrangements made by the adults. Others were afraid of being left out, of not fitting in. And then there were those who had been swept alone by the tide of peer pressure. The silent weight of even the top student of the grade is pulling them onto that ill-fated bus. But in the end, the consequences fell squarely on their own shoulders. The police officer gestured for the reporters to step back, his voice firm and commanding as he began taking statements one by one. Each person who had been on that bus was now a witness, a victim, or an accomplice in this unfolding disaster. Jen Man still tried to pull Peo aside, her hand reaching out with a desperate urgency, but he flinched away, his body recoiling as if her touch burned. Without a word, he walked to the end of a hallway and slumped onto a long bench, his shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the floor. The screen of his phone glowed, the local trending list already shifting. The top headline had changed. High school exam minibus tardiness incident reversal. Parenzillagali urganisha una autorija veiclas. Previously publicly slandered female examinee J. Man's eyes caught the title. A shrill scream tore from her throat as she lunged toward the reporter's camera, her fingers clawing at the air. Don't you dare post that. Don't you dare show my baby. The camera wobbled, the operator stumbling back. But before she could reach it, a police officer stepped in, his arm a solid barrier between her and the lens. The last exam English unfolded, with an eerie calm for me. Perhaps it was because the worst had already happened. Nothing could frighten me anymore. Every question felt like a small victory, a quiet rebellion against the chaos that had tried to swallow me whole. When the final bell rang, the entire examination hall fell into a moment of profound silence. Then, like a dam breaking, sounds erupted. Someone sobbing, someone laughing, Someone simply staring at the desk, their mind 1,000 miles away. I packed my stationery bag slowly, deliberately, and walked out of the school gate. My mother was waiting there, a small bouquet of gardenias clutched in her hands. Her eyes met mine, and she spoke only 3 words. "It's over." But as the words left her lips, tears spilled down her cheeks. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the tremor in her shoulders. These past 3 days, she had filed police reports, accompanied me to give statements, contacted lawyers, and still returned to the hospital for her night shifts. She was more exhausted than I was. Yuking stood a short distance away. Her eyes renayed with red. She stepped forward, her voice steady, but thick, with emotion. "Z, the school will issue a formal statement." The vice principal followed behind her, his expression awkward, almost apologetic student song. The school's response was not timely enough. "In the past 2 days, you've been wronged." I looked at him, my gaze unwavering. The statement must clearly state that I did not organize the minibus, did not collect any fees, and did not cause anyone to be late. He nodded a quick, almost desperate motion. "It will be clearly written." Xiaoxi approached, holding his phone, with its cracked screen. "My phone is fixed now. I have the complete video from the school gate." Shinky ran over, her voice catching in her throat. "My dad's dash cam captured the moment Jiang Man hit you." She paused, her eyes glistening. "Zet, I am sorry. I didn't dare come over the day before yesterday." I saw the dark circles under her eyes, the guilt etched into her features. "But you came later." She shoved a file folder into my hands. Inside were several signed statements. The 8 classmates, who hadn't boarded the bus, and had made their own way to the exam along, with a few parents, who hadn't used the mini bus, had all written down what had happened. "We couldn't let you take the blame alone." At the school gate, Jiang Man was nowhere to be seen. Word had it she was cornered by a group of parents at the police station demanding refunds, compensation for medical expenses, lost wages, and travel costs. The owner of the illegal bus, Boss Luo, was fined, and his vehicle impounded. Those who had missed the Chinese exam couldn't retake it. They could only continue with the remaining subjects and be admitted based on their actual scores. That was the cruelest part of reality. 15 minutes late. No amount of crying could change it. That evening, the school statement, the local police report, and the traffic police's explanation were all released. Yuking used her teacher account to post a complete timeline. Uncle Tang's transport company also issued a refund notice and proof of qualifications. In the video she uploaded, Jian Man was seen slapping me at the school gate, screaming, "Why didn't you warn us?" The next frame cut to the reminder I had posted in the group chat the day before. The comments finally shifted. This girl was so wronged. She had already warned them, and she still got hit. Baby's mother is the real culprit here. Using your child's college entrance exam as content for your social media circle. Ridiculous. Young Men deleted her previous videos, but the internet never only remembers what people wanted to remember. The screenshots of her live streamed crying, the voting results, the chat, records of her collecting the fees. All of it was circulated by the parents. The most damning piece was an interview. Sumian, the girl, who had missed the Chinese exam, sat in front of the camera, her face still pale. Auntie kept saying that the top student in the grade was going, that the mini bus was more reliable. We didn't dare not follow. When the bus broke down, she told us not to cry, that crying would ruin our makeup. The reporter asked, "What do you want to say most right now?" Sumian looked into the camera, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to be cool. I just wanted to get to the exam on time." That video went viral. Jiang Man's baby's mother persona shattered into a joke. But she never apologized. The next day, she posted a long message on her social media, a mother's love maliciously twisted. "My baby is hurt, and I hurt more than anyone." She attached a photo of Pio as a child. 5 minutes later, Pio reposted it. He wrote only one sentence: "Stop using me as an excuse." On the day the college entrance exam results were released, I was at the hospital accompanying my mother after her night shift. The score inquiry system crashed 3 times. On the 4th refresh, the numbers appeared. 689. My mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Yuking's call came right after. That congratulations. Third in the entire school. Her voice was a mix of laughter and tears. You're set. I leaned against the white wall of the hospital corridor, finally letting out a long, deep breath. A few minutes later, the class group chat exploded. Shinawa had done well, scoring high enough to get into the teaching program she wanted. Xiaoxi scored more than a dozen points higher than usual and applied for law. Those who had missed the Chinese exam saw their scores dragged down severely. Sumian, who could usually make it to a top-tier university, only managed a regular undergraduate. Her mother later posted in the group chat, "The child has accepted the result. We will pursue civil compensation." No one tried to persuade her to be magnanimous. Pei's results also came out. Missing one subject, his total score fell into an awkward position. Forget Tsinghua or Peking University. Even the safety schools he had counted on were now out of reach. Word had it he refused to retake the year and applied to an ordinary university in another province. Jan Man disagreed and made a scene at home for days. In the end, Pei moved in with his father before the civil lawsuit went to court. J-Men came to see me once. She blocked me at the entrance of my neighborhood. She had lost weight, but her eyes still held that commanding, entitled look. "Son, I can compensate you for emotional damages. Just drop the defamation lawsuit against me." I stopped in my tracks. No, her face darkened. "You've already scored so well. What more do you want?" "I did well, but that doesn't mean you didn't hurt me." Zhang Man gritted her teeth. "Did you know that now? Every time I step outside, people point fingers at me. My friends won't talk to me. I got kicked out of the parent group, and my baby won't even see me." I looked at her. "That's what you deserve to bear." Her eyes suddenly turned red again. "I just love my child. This time, I didn't stay silent." "You don't love the child. You love the version of yourself that gets praised for being a good mother." Jen Man froze in place. The security guard from the school walked over. "Miss Song, do you need any help?" She turned and walked away, her high heels clicking in a hurried, chaotic rhythm. And later, the court verdict came down. Young Man was found guilty of infringing on my right to reputation. She was ordered to issue a public apology and to compensate me for mental distress damages and reasonable expenses incurred in defending my rights. The incident where she struck me at the school gate, the local police station imposed an administrative penalty in accordance with the law. As for the little train incident, the parents, who had written on it, filed a lawsuit against Jan Man, and Boss Luo bore corresponding responsibility for illegally carrying passengers. Zhang Man, as the organizer, had collected fees and concealed the vehicle's risks. She was held primarily responsible for civil damages. The compensation amount wouldn't bankrupt her, but it was enough to force her to sell that luxury car she used to drive every day to pick up and drop off her baby. After the verdict, she was required to post a public apology video. In the footage, there was no filter, no delicate makeup. Her eye bags were heavy. Zhang Man previously posted false content on online platforms, claiming that Suanzi caused the college entrance exam to be delayed for the exam day transport. This caused severe damage to Suanzi's reputation. Upon verification, Sans merely compiled the list for the school's official exam day bus service. She did not collect any fees, nor did she organize the involved little train vehicle. I hereby offer my sincere apology to Song Zi. The comment section showed no sympathy. Now you know what sincere means. Back when you were hitting people, you sure knew how to yell, "Mommy, dearest crash," and burn moment. Before the new semester began, Yuking had invited a few of us classmates out for a meal. The restaurant was small. On the table sat a steaming pot of congee with seafood. She raised her glass. "I wish you all a study-stable path ahead." Shini smiled and said, "Teacher, that sounds like an ad for exam day transport buses." Everyone laughed. Jusher places repaired phone on the table. "I've signed up for law school. In the future, if something like this happens again, at least I'll know how to lay out the chain of evidence clearly." Shini said she wanted to become a teacher just like Teacher. Someone who can stand up when a student is wronged. Yuking Ho waved her hand dismissively, but her eyes were red. "Don't follow my example. I also have things I didn't do well. I picked up a piece of fish with my chopsticks and suddenly thought of that bus that was can-led before the college entrance exam. It never made it to the exam site. It never appeared in anyone's social media feed. But its route schedule, its qualification documents, its refund records, they became the starting point for all the truth that came later. Crowds love excitement, but excitement doesn't equal safety. When you're swept along, the last thing you should trust is who shouts the loudest or who speaks in the sweetest, softest tone. What you should trust are the rules, the evidence, and the people who truly take responsibility for the outcome. September came. I dragged my luggage to the university for registration. The campus entrance was crowded. Parents pulled suitcases, endlessly reminding their children to eat well, dress warmly, and not stay up late. Mom walked me to the dormitory building. She stuffed a bag of common medicines into my backpack. Motion sickness pills, fever reducers, Band-Aids, all here. I laughed. Mom, it's not like I'm riding an exam day bus. She laughed too, but as she laughed, her eyes reened. Z, if someone bullies you in the future, don't wait until the very end to tell me. I hugged her. I know. My phone buzzed. Yuking has sent a photo. It was a screenshot of this year's new senior parent group notification. The school's unified exam day. Transport vehicles are officially licensed passenger buses. Registration is voluntary. Fees are publicly disclosed. No parent is allowed to privately organize any collective exam day transport vehicles. Below that was a line in bold. All risk reminders must be respected. No safety regulations may be replaced by emotions. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comment section. Next, there's another similar story. Let's continue to see. Reborn back to 1957. At the age of 6, I sent the large sum of savings books and money orders I had scavenged from my adoptive father's room to the police station and completely disappeared from the public eye. My adoptive father was noble and virtuous. When he retired from the military due to injury, he gave up the opportunity to work at the Armed Forces Department and donated all his veteran settlement funds to the families of his fallen comrades. After returning to his hometown to farm, he continued to uphold his principles by helping neighbors and caring for the elderly and orphans. He said, when others are in difficult times, we should lend a hand, whenever possible. Although our life was poor, we were rich in spirit. But I, who had proudly and actively learned from him my whole life, only realized after being reborn that my biological father, whom I had never met, had been sending $1 or $200 every month in an attempt to corrupt him. In 1967, I resolutely threw myself in front of a speeding Jeep, actively ending my short 16 years of life. I thought I was going to die just like that, but unexpectedly, the chaotic sounds around me gradually became clearer, vaguely familiar in my daze. Is this how you raise her? Anna is only 6 years old. 6 years old. Do you understand? Under the scorching sun, you make her carry a hoe till the land for that young widow. Do you even have any humanity? The particularly angry voice of a young woman jolted my drifting consciousness awake. It's Auntie. The moment I recognized the voice, my heart swelled with both bitterness and gratitude. Auntie is still so kind. I was an abandoned baby that Grandma found. My adoptive father was injured during the war. So, my grandmother registered me under his name, and we became a family. The year after my adoptive father returned home from the military, my grandmother passed away, and I began living with him. My adoptive father was a man of noble character and integrity. When he was discharged due to injury, he gave up the opportunity to work at the Armed Forces Department and donated all his veteran settlement funds to the families of his fallen comrades. After returning to the countryside to farm, he continued to uphold his character, helping neighbors and caring for the elderly and widowed, influenced by my grandmother's teachings since childhood and the praises of the villagers that echoed in my ears. I admired my adoptive father and actively sought to learn from him. At the age of 6, I followed my adoptive father to help a widow in the village who was pregnant with a posthumous child, hoe the fields. However, due to the lack of food and clothing at home, I was hungry and working under the scorching sun, feeling dizzy and weak, In a moment of carelessness, I injured my ankle. In the rural fields, minor bumps and bruises were no big deal. My foster father had never raised a young child before, and didn't realize that my weak, fragile little body might not be able to handle it. So, he didn't pay much attention. My wound got infected, and I had a high fever that wouldn't go away. I almost didn't make it. It was only when my aunt, who had married into the same village, came back to her parents' home and saw my condition that she hurriedly brought a barefoot doctor. That's how I managed to survive. However, it left a lasting ailment. Ever since then, I could only walk, with a limp. Thinking of my aunt, a sense of urgency welled up inside me. I wanted to open my eyes and see her. Since I was young, everyone told me to learn from my adoptive father, to speak of dedication, contribution, self-sacrifice, and expecting nothing in return. Only my aunt truly cared for me. She would secretly tell me to take good care of my health, not to go thirsty, hungry, or exhausted, and to look after myself properly. Occasionally, she would even slip me a sweet potato or half a steamed bun. Unfortunately, later on, my uncle got a promotion, and she became eligible to accompany him as a military spouse. She followed him to a distant island, and we never had the chance to meet again. However, every year or so, I would receive clothes and shoes sent by my aunt, although the clothes were worn-out hand-me-downs from my cousin, who was a year younger than me, and although most of the shoes had holes at the toes or were coming apart at the seams, with cracked soles, they were all a bit too small for me to wear. But being remembered was the happiest memory of my childhood. I was grateful and wanted to grow up and work hard to repay her. Unfortunately, a child of a fallen comrade, whom my adoptive father had once helped, came to visit during the Great Link-Up. When passing by the area, he had ill intentions toward me, and taking advantage of my adoptive father's inattention, cornered me in the room, intending to force himself on me. Having been used to hard labor since childhood, I was not weak. In the struggle, I accidentally killed someone. A life for a life. My righteous foster father personally took me to the police station. At that time, only 16 years old, under the disappointed and pained gaze of my foster father, I bore the condemnation of my conscience, but still couldn't resist the fear of death. So, I ran away, taking advantage of a bathroom break. I climbed over the wall and escaped, but as I wandered the streets, I thought of my adoptive father, who had worked tirelessly to raise me, of the disappointment that might be in his eyes, and of how I, with my lame leg and hobbling gait, could have possibly escaped from a man with a military background. He must have let me go on purpose. Thinking of my adoptive father's usual ways, I realized that for the rest of his life, he might torment himself with self-blame and self-loathing for letting me go. In the end, I still couldn't bear the thought of tarnishing his impeccable reputation. Because of me, after hesitating for a long while, I finally took out the scattered 1 cent and 2 cent coins I had saved for over a decade, and mailed the only possession I had, a jade pendant that I was said to have been wearing, when I was found, to my aunt, who was stationed with the military on a distant island. I wonder if in the future my aunt will occasionally think of me when she sees a jade pendant. Later, I deliberately stepped in front of a speeding jeep. The endless cycle of backbreaking labor, the constant burden of dirty and exhausting work has finally faded away. I no longer need to carry the weight of my adoptive father's expectations, striving to live up to his hopes and repay his care. At this moment, I am finally living for myself. Bang! Brains splattered everywhere. Perhaps this is the sound of flowers blooming. In the last second, before closing my eyes, I saw a well-dressed, noble young man hurriedly getting out of the jeep. Panicked and distraught, with trembling hands, he held me, tears streaming down his face. I didn't understand. Before I could even voice the inexplicable sense of grievance and bitterness that had just risen in my heart, my consciousness sank completely into darkness. I never thought that, when I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the past. My aunt's voice was right beside me. She hadn't yet followed the army, thinking that I hadn't made any mistakes at this time, and that I would soon see my aunt. I struggled to open my eyes, but then I heard my adoptive father speak. His voice was muffled and irritable. Don't act like you're some kind of saint if you really cared. Why did you abandon her to her mother? And register her under my name right after she was born? You don't even acknowledge her. So why do you care how I raise her? Her father, Sam Yamas, is a pampered young master from a wealthy family, who needs to be waited on hand and foot. She has the blood of Sam James. If I don't educate her properly, and she grows up misguided, how can I ever face the uniform I once wore? My head was buzzing as if I couldn't quite grasp what they meant. And who did she give birth to? What does her dad mean? The aunt was furious. Yes, you're capable. You're noble. If you're so upright, why did you take her dad's money? Her dad sends 100 or 200 to you every month, and I don't see you sending it back. And, with that, you just let her suffer like this. If anything happens to her, just see if that lunatic Sam James won't risk his own skin to come over and kill you. Her adoptive father grunted, still muttering discontentedly under his breath. Nothing's happened yet, and we've already seen a doctor. Haven't we? She wanted to learn from me and contribute to everyone, but she was too impatient. How can that be my fault? I could no longer hear what they were saying after that. How eating steamed cornbread and pickles every day wasn't, because that's all we had at home. It was, because that's all I deserved. I am always grateful, even though life is tough and tiring, but my adoptive father, who raised me, receives 100 or 200 yuan sent to him every month. I once thought that the aunt, who occasionally sent me old clothes, and whom I wanted to repay, was actually my biological mother, who should have been the one to raise me. I don't know. When I broke free from the coma and woke up staring at the spiderweb hanging from the roof beam, their earlier words echoing in my mind over and over again like self-inflicted torture. After a long while, my eyes moved, and I unconsciously raised my hand to wipe away the tears that had fallen at some point, silently getting off the bed. By now, there was no sound in the room or the courtyard. It was probably time for work, and everyone had gone to the fields. I went out and turned toward the main house, using a wire to pick the lock of my foster father's door, since he wasn't my biological father, and we had to maintain propriety. I had never once entered his room. While growing up, inside the room, there was a brand new large wardrobe, an 8 immortals table, a long altar table, and thick soft cotton quilts. On the redwood bed cabinet by the bed, a radio and a watch were casually placed. I stared blankly, but what came to mind were the stiff quilts, patched upon patches that I had slept under since childhood, and the rickety-legged old tables and stools in my room that faintly emitted a musty smell. I pursed my lips and continued rummaging through the room. In the bed cabinet, there was no shortage of dried meat, dried sweet potatoes, malted milk powder, peach crisps, and small biscuits. Hidden beneath the cabinet was a metal box containing a thick stack of money and ration coupons from the second year after I was born. A sum of money was deposited into the passbook every month. It started at 1 million per month, then increased to 2 million, and over the years it grew until this year, when it became 200 per month. My heart instantly turned ice cold. With trembling hands, I tucked the passbook and money orders into my pocket, found a backpack, and stuffed all kinds of food into it before carrying it on my back. Then I poured kerosene on the bedding, tables, and cabinets through the overturned radio, and watched into the kerosene-soaked bedding and clothes, liamats, and tossed it in before closing the door and turning to leave. In the village, those who worked went to work, those who studied went to school, and those who didn't go to school were all on the slopes digging for wild vegetables. I successfully avoided everyone all the way to the commune, then took a bus to the county town. In the small park at the entrance of a supply and marketing cooperative, I lay by the bench holding the paper and pen I had just bought, using the few Chinese characters and pinyin I had learned in the literacy class at the educated youth point in my previous life. Scribbling and drawing in circles, I put the money, ration coupons, bank book, and the letter into an envelope and mailed it to the police station. Then, limping, I left the city and headed into the mountains, without looking back. The police station clerk opened the envelope while walking, and money notes and passbooks fluttered down. The commotion drew everyone in the office to gather around. What's going on? What's going on? The bewildered crowd scrambled to pick up the money and notes, while someone opened the passbook and gasped in astonishment at the astronomical sum written on it. Someone pulled out the thin letter inside and began to read it. Dear police officers, I'm sorry to trouble you with my personal matters. I am a 6-year-old child, and my adoptive father is a man of noble character and integrity, a proud retired soldier. When he retired from the military due to injury, he gave up the opportunity to work at the Armed Forces Department and donated all his veteran resettlement funds to the families of his fallen comrades. After returning to his hometown to farm, he continued to uphold his principles, helping his neighbors and caring for the elderly and widowed. We ate cornbread and pickles every day, barely getting by on half-full stomachs, but helping others brought us joy, and our spirits were rich. At this point, everyone's expressions were still quite relaxed, even showing some admiration. But when their eyes fell on the money and vouchers, they felt something was off. But today, I unexpectedly learned some very bad news. My biological father, whom I have never met, has been trying to corrupt him with money every single month for the past 5 years. I don't know who my biological father is, but in the eyes of my righteous adoptive father, my very existence is likely seen as a sin, given that I was born from a man who can offer large sums of money. The physical labor he assigned me, weeding, digging, watering, gathering firewood, and chopping wood may never be enough to atone for my sins. The officer reading the letter was an older policeman, his voice growing softer and softer. Everyone exchanged glances, their expressions turning somewhat peculiar. Someone impatient snatched the letter and continued reading. The money orders and bank book in the envelope. Please, uncles, return them to my biological father. We don't want his money, and there's no need to send any more in the future. More people joined in, and they seemed to be able to picture a naive, innocent little child, speaking earnestly and quietly. Uncles, there's no need to look for me anymore. My adoptive father is kind and willing to raise me, but I don't want my flawed self to stand before such an upright and good man. It would torment me with guilt every moment. Now that I'm old enough to eat and farm, I can take care of myself. If I truly meet with misfortune, consider it as me repaying the mistakes of this lifetime. This world is too bitter. I have already been here. The last sentence was barely audible. Everyone's expressions froze for half a second before they snapped back to reality. Could this be a joke? Whether it is or not. When was this letter sent? Hurry and look for her. If it's true, there might still be time. She's only 6 years old. Where could she possibly go by herself? A large group of people had already gathered and were rushing out. At 6 years old, my adoptive father retired from the military and gave up his job and resettlement allowance. Hearing the commotion, the deputy chief, who came to check on the situation, caught the keywords, and his expression changed drastically. Hurry! Find him quickly! He shouted, while quickly running to make a phone call. Hello! Get Captain James. Hurry! The police station in the county town was in chaos, and I was completely unaware by then. I had been walking in the mountains for who knows how long, and eventually my ankle couldn't hold up anymore. I took off my backpack and sat down on a rock by the stream. The view from this place was excellent. I gazed into the distance and faintly saw black smoke rising from a village somewhere, as if all the things that shouldn't exist were also drifting away. With the wind, I curved my eyes into a smile, then shifted my gaze to the endless mountains. I was young, with no money or food, to barely keep myself alive. The mountains, rich with autumn's bounty, seemed like a good choice, but before I could find an abandoned hunter's cabin or a cave to settle in, perhaps due to the exhaustion from waking up after fainting and rushing around, my mind grew hazy, my vision went dark, and I passed out. I don't know if I can wake up again, and I also don't know if I want to wake up again. The moment I fainted, I realized that my state of mind was even calmer than when I resolutely faced death in my previous life. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself placed in a makeshift nest of grass, with my carrying basket right beside me. I quietly looked around, The space here is quite large, divided by some old, worn-out boards. The area where I'm staying shows signs of someone living here. Next to it, there are old rickety tables and stools, similar to the ones in my previous dilapidated house, with a few daily necessities scattered on them. In the straw nest next to mine, although the bedding is tattered, it is complete in the outer section that has been partitioned off. The light coming through the small ventilation window faintly reveals wooden stakes, driven along the walls, and leftover feet on the ground. This must be a shed for raising livestock. I suppose footsteps approached, and I looked up to see an old man walking in, clutching a handful of unfamiliar grass. "Oh, you're awake." He rummaged through the shed and pulled out a stone mortar typically used for grinding garlic, then crushed the grass inside after sprinkling in some unknown powder and mixing it thoroughly. He finally approached me. I remained motionless, watching as he cracked my ankle with a series of pops, then applied the paste he had just mashed up. He chuckled. "Little one, can't you feel any pain injured like this? How much more have you walked?" Lucky he ran into this old man of mine. It seemed he hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time, and now he had so much to say. He couldn't stop. After rambling on for a long time, he suddenly realized something and carefully examined me again, feeling my pulse one moment and lifting my eyelids the next, seeing that I still remained unmoved. He frowned and muttered to himself, "There doesn't seem to be any other major issues here. Your brain and throat are just fine." He glanced at the basket filled with many rare items and the wound on his ankle from the hoe, convinced he had guessed the truth. He sighed. "You'll be fine. When you grow up, even fingers are of different lengths, so it's normal for families to show a bit of favoritism. Some connections last only this lifetime, with no promise of the next. You should take care of yourself and prioritize your own well-being. Look, I'm an old man, with one foot in the grave, yet I still have to work just as hard as everyone else every day, only to earn half the work points they do. Isn't that much worse than you? A little girl who still has someone to take care of her. Does that make you feel a little better?" I watched him quietly the whole time, silent and unwilling to speak. You're driving me crazy." He shook his hand and left. I watched his angry retreating back, a flicker of mischief passing through my eyes. Did he mistake me for a little kid who ran away from home because my family favored boys over girls? I now vaguely realized where I was. The abandoned horse farm in the valley of the neighboring village after being taken over by the collective. It was used as a cattle shed where the village's cattle and mules were kept. I had heard in my previous life that a highly skilled doctor lived here known as Old Edward. It was said that his family were large landowners before the founding of the nation. He studied medicine, had great talent, and his skills were far above average. After he started raising cattle and meals here, people would occasionally come to him for medical treatment, bringing grains, eggs, and meat as payment. He never really suffered much while living here. Who doesn't get sick these days? With him around, the surrounding villages all benefit. No one would ever give him a hard time back then. Some people pitied me for having a lame leg at such a young age, and secretly suggested I come to him for a checkup, saying there might be a chance to cure it, but I couldn't afford the consultation fee. And given my adoptive father's strict and uncompromising nature, I didn't want to put him in a difficult position. So, I never brought it up. I never expected that in this lifetime he would take me in again. Old Edward is truly a good man. He never forgets to set aside a bowl of food for me when he cooks, and he even changes my bandages on time, knowing that I might not respond. He still carefully reminds me, "Your leg, you can't put weight on it for the next couple of days. Don't take it lightly. You're still so young. If you end up with a limp, people will laugh at you." He originally intended to scare me a little with his words. I'm not really sure if I can take it in. After all, I was lying there quite peacefully, seemingly unresponsive to everything. But unexpectedly, I actually glanced over. Instinctively, he smiled, and his expression relaxed a little. "It's good that you still care about something." I was speechless for a moment. I just didn't want to talk. Not that I was stupid. I'll have to make a living on my own from now on. So, it's naturally better if I'm not crippled. But I still couldn't be bothered to respond since I couldn't move for the time being. I just stayed there, without moving. My mind went blank, and I could stare at the light and shadows coming through the window for a long, long time. In that day, in front of the door were no one, but old Edward was around. A tall, slender figure drifted over as if they had lost their soul. He was backlit, and I couldn't make out his face, but even through the window, from a distance I could still clearly sense the aura of suppressed despair and near collapse emanating from him. "Excuse me," he spoke. My gaze shifted slightly, but in the next moment, bang! It was the sound of a body hitting the ground. Old Edward's cursing voice came from outside. "Oh, another one looking for death. Don't go looking for death right in front of my old man's door." He worked tirelessly, struggling to drag the person inside, and tossed them next to me, quickly administering a few acupuncture needles, then shouted, when he saw me pass the water over there. "Oh." I handed over the large half bowl of water from the stone stool beside me. Old Edward pressed on the acupoints and poured it down before finally letting out a sigh of relief. Old Edward was truly furious. One after another, he actually starved and dehydrated himself, ending up in such a wretched state. If finding food is difficult, then finding something to drink. Where can't you find a sip of water? Clearly, he brought this upon himself. I had already retreated back to my original spot, looking on. With curiosity, this person had a tall and slender figure, with his head tilted to the side. His full head of silver white hair stood out starkly in the dimly lit shed. My eyes blinked uncomfortably, and for some reason, a wave of stinging tears welled up. How absurd! I turned over, burying my face in the soft wheat straw, my tears increasingly uncontrollable. In the time that followed, I occasionally glanced at my roommate next door. From my angle, I could only see the back of his head. He lay there motionless, more serene than I was. At least, the mush that old Edward brought over, the food placed before me, I couldn't bear to waste. So, I would finish it all along. With that, for certain personal matters, I would still drag my leg out to take care of them. And he, except for the rare unconscious moments, when he would carefully touch the pocket closest to his heart, he remained motionless, neither eating nor drinking. Old Edward couldn't stand to watch, and would occasionally force-feed him some porridge or water, to which he didn't seem to put up much resistance by clenching his teeth. His life hung by a thread, and so another 2 days passed. That early morning, figuring my foot was well enough to walk on, I crawled out of the haystack and followed the sound to where old Edward was cutting fodder by the stone trough. I went over to help him by holding the grass under the chopper. Old Edward let out a cheerful exclamation. "Not bad, not bad. You can walk now. Hey, and you even know to help out an old man like me." I didn't speak, and my hands kept moving. Old Edward didn't care whether I replied or not, continuing to give orders smoothly. "There's water over there. How many days has it been since you last washed up? You're so filthy. Go clean yourself up. There's breakfast on the stove. Half is for you, and the other half is for that old man inside." Ha! They're all acting like lords, expecting this old man to serve them. I gathered the fodder on the ground closer to old Edward, then turned to fetch water from the cracked-edge water jar to wash up, and went to the earth and stove to get some food. I estimated the amount in the pot, and set aside half. There was about half a bowl of porridge, a sweet potato the size of a fist, and an egg, which I brought back to my place. My roommate, who had been living with me for 2 days, seemed to have finally recovered a bit. The person, who had been barely alive, was now able to sit up against the brick wall. At that moment, he had his eyes closed, and for the first time, I took a proper look at his face. The moment I saw his face clearly, I froze in place. He is the one driving the jeep, the food in his hand along. With the bowl fell to the ground. All at once, as the paste splattered all over the floor, it made a loud thud. The shattered fragments flew up and scratched a bloody mark on his face before landing nearby. At the person, with closed eyes, finally opened them. His gaze, lifeless and indifferent, swept over, without any ripple of emotion. In the next instant, his pupils suddenly contracted. Before I could even react, he half knelt and moved to my side, reaching out to hold my thin, small shoulders, examining me from head to toe, with a greed that seemed unwilling to miss even an inch. He opened his mouth, paused for a moment as if searching for his voice. "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" His voice was a bit, perhaps from not speaking for days, and his tone trembled slightly before I could respond. His next words followed immediately. "Are you hurt anywhere? Are you feeling unwell?" I looked at him quietly, without responding, but confusion was evident in my eyes. He finally calmed down a bit, his outstretched hand, wanting to do something, but he restrained himself and withdrew it while picking up the sweet potatoes and eggs that had rolled on the ground. He gently pushed my back, leading me away from the mess. Only then did he stand up, trying to soften his voice as he asked me, "Are you here to bring me food? Have you eaten yet?" I didn't say anything. Old Edward, hearing the commotion, hurried over anxiously. "Hey," I said, "if you don't want to eat, then don't eat. Why are you taking your temper out on a little kid?" However, before he could finish speaking, he fell silent as he took in the scene before him. "Huh!" The white-haired young man looked at old Edward, his thin, pale face still revealing a gentle, refined handsomeness as he smiled warmly. "Thank you for your care. I'm sorry to have troubled you. I must have frightened the child just now." His voice had returned to normal by now. Clear, smooth, and pleasant to the ear, old Edward wore a look of disbelief as he curiously examined the young man. "How strange is today, some kind of rare occasion. You all, one by one. The little one knows how to go out now. This one in front of me. Even if you took an elixir, you wouldn't recover this quickly if it weren't for the fact that his half-dead appearance earlier couldn't be faked. I'd almost think he was here to mess with this old man, but in an instant, he noticed the white-haired young man trying hard to restrain himself. Yet, his gaze still subtly lingered on the little child, reluctant to look away. He then seemed lost in thought. I ignored them and walked back to the stove on my own. I scooped out the porridge, took out the eggs and sweet potatoes, and stood there to eat. My mind was preoccupied with what I should do next. Life boils down to just two things: food and clothing. I don't seem to be in a hurry to find a cave or a cabin for now. Old Edward probably won't kick me out anytime soon. As for clothes, I can manage for the time being. And food, the things I couldn't bear to burn and brought with me in the basket are still there. After a brief pause, I already had an idea in mind. After finishing breakfast, I casually washed the bowl and the stove, then grabbed a broom to sweep the floor around the stove. Returning to the shed, I rummaged through the basket and pulled out the most valuable item, an unopened can of malted milk powder, and handed it to old Edward, pointing to my leg. This was to thank him. Old Edward exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, that's too kind of you." But even as he said that, his hands were quick and nimble, holding on tightly, without letting go. This stuff isn't easy to get. I've been stuck here for 6 or 7 years now. The last time I caught a whiff of this scent was over 2 years ago, when someone brought it while seeking medical help. I stopped looking at him, hoisted my basket onto my back, roughly figured out the direction, and headed away from where the old village used to be. Where are you going, little one?" Old Edward called out, and the white-haired young man from earlier directly followed behind me. I paused for a moment, ignored them, and walked all the way to the village, choosing the best blue brick and tile-roofed house to knock on the door. "Who is it?" The one who opened the door was a young woman holding a child, with an air of scholarly grace about her too lazy to speak. I took out a pen and paper and wrote 3 words exchanged for grain. Then he put down the basket and showed it to her. The young woman saw the contents inside and revealed a delighted expression. "Malted milk powder, dried meat, and all of these. I want them all." Malted milk powder was a rare commodity, even if it was just half a jar. There were plenty of people eager to get their hands on it. I just looked at her, signaling her to make an offer. The young woman glanced at the paper, then at me, and then at the pale, thin, white-haired young man, who had been following me silently the whole time. I don't know what she imagined, but she looked at me with sympathy. "Trading for grain, right? Coarse grain or fine grain?" "We don't have much fine grain to spare, but coarse grain is plentiful." And your dried sweet potatoes. Aren't they also food? Why do you still want to trade? With me? Why? Probably because I'm repulsed by it in my heart. But I'm afraid of going hungry, and I can't bear to waste food. After thinking it over, I can only exchange it with someone else that way. I can pretend this thing has nothing to do with the past. The young woman, through a mix of guessing and intuition, finally struck a deal with me. A basket full of dried meat, dried sweet potatoes, malted milk powder, peach crisp biscuits, and sugar were exchanged for a set of patched old clothes that fit me, along with 2 kilograms of white flour, 2 kilograms of millet, 5 kilograms of cornmeal, and 50 kilograms of sweet potatoes. The white-haired young man voluntarily took the grain and carried it. I was on edge the whole time, afraid he would snatch the grain and run. It wasn't until we returned, and he placed the grain beside my sternness that my anxiety, which had lasted the entire journey, finally subsided. Then I felt a bit conflicted again. In the end, I still picked a fist-sized sweet potato for him. The white-haired young man was taken aback for a moment, then suddenly smiled, his eyes crinkling. Is this my reward? I was momentarily dazed by his smile, and instinctively averted my gaze, retreating back into my makeshift straw bed. Without dwelling on why I was acting so strangely, I began to take stock of the supplies I had on hand. My appetite is small, and even with careful rationing, this would only last me a little over 3 months at most. But the weather here is cold, with freezing and snowy conditions lasting for half the year. It's only autumn now, and this is far from enough to get me through the winter. With that thought, I turned my gaze toward the mountains. At noon, I took a fist-sized sweet potato and went to help old Edward tend the fire, burying the sweet potato in the stove. By the time his meal was ready, my sweet potato was also cooked through. I dug out the sweet potato, casually cleaned the same stove, and then, tucking the sweet potato away, shouldered the empty basket and headed into the mountains. Hey, aren't you going to eat? Just after serving the rice, old Edward, who was watching the little kid voluntarily cleaning the stove and feeling more and more pleased, saw the child head straight into the mountains. Without looking back, he instinctively turned his head, wanting to complain to the young man. But then he saw the young man pull out a raw sweet potato from who knows where, wrap it carefully in a cloth as if it were a treasure, tuck it into his pocket, and then stride off after the little kid. My goal is very clear. Find food, digging for wild vegetables, picking mushrooms, chestnuts, hazelnuts, walnuts. I'm not picky about any kind of wild fruit. Fortunately, it's harvest season now, and people are so busy they can barely keep up, leaving all kinds of resources in the mountains and forests unattended, which gives me the perfect opportunity. I walked and stopped along the way, gaining a lot. As for the white-haired young man, who went from keeping a distance to now openly walking by my side, I don't understand. I don't get it, and I don't want to understand or get it. I kept collecting things, and every time I returned with a full load, the young man would take the initiative to grab my backpack later. He pushed his luck even further. The carrying basket ended up in his hands the entire time, and every time he returned, when I saw him smiling at me, with his eyes curved, I would still, as if I had lost my mind, couldn't help but give him a handful of wild vegetables or a wild fruit as payment. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. When I went out again, I grabbed old Edward's and used bamboo basket and shoved it into the young man's arms. If you want something, can't you go into the mountains and find it yourself? Why do you have to take mine? Isn't it tiring for me to dig it out? The young man was taken aback for a moment, then laughed as he looked at the girl's angry and unusually vivid face. I instantly grew even angrier, turned around, and plunged into the mountains, but couldn't help pricking up my ears. It wasn't until I heard the familiar rustling sound of someone stepping on the leaves behind me that I realized, without even noticing it myself, I had let out a sigh of relief. I calmly chose a direction into the mountains that I hadn't taken before, never expecting my luck to be so incredibly good this time. I actually spotted a chestnut tree that had already split open. I was instantly thrilled, but the next moment, I realized something. I stiffly turned my head and looked at the oversized basket carried by the young man, who had already caught up, then put down the small basket I was carrying, which was meant for a little child. The size contrast was quite stark. I pursed my lips, pursed them again, and then pursed them once more. Finally, I quietly began using the branch I had been using to probe the path to gather the mature fallen burrs from the ground, picking up the chestnuts and putting them into the basket. Leave the burrs. Just take the chestnuts. This way, I can definitely fit more. I was a little pleased with myself for coming up with such a good idea, only to find that the young man had chosen to do the same as me. And what's more, he's much faster than I am. His hands are fair, slender, and good-looking. Yet, when shelling them, he doesn't seem to feel the prickles at all. The chestnuts in the basket are piling up rapidly. So frustrating. So frustrating. Fortunately, the young man probably feels like he's taking advantage of me. From time to time, he would toss another handful into my basket. I only gathered what had fallen on the ground, and, with his additions, my basket was almost as full as his in the end. I didn't feel so shortchanged. On the way back, he carried the large basket on his back, and casually took the smaller one I was struggling to lift, carrying it in his hand. I paused for a moment. Is this to compensate me? I don't need to give any more payment, right? Unexpectedly, when we returned to the shed, he actually poured all the chestnuts from the large and small baskets into the place where I stored my food. I stared at him wide-eyed. He smiled at me, with curved eyes, just like many times before, his expression still holding a hint of anticipation. I wasn't entirely sure, so I scooped up an overflowing handful of chestnuts and handed them to him. He happily took them, turned around, and went back to his makeshift shelter next door to store them away. I blinked, glanced at the massive pile of chestnuts beside me, then looked at the young man again. Suddenly, I felt he was actually somewhat agreeable. My conscience still aches a little. After all, when old Edward was cooking, I had brought extra rations this time to include a portion for the young man. The white-haired young man held the extra meal I gave him with a solemn and cherished expression, as if he were holding some kind of treasure. I felt a bit embarrassed and turned my face away. It's a bit strange, a bit curious, but never mind. I'd better not think about it. From that day on, our way of interacting changed a little again. We each carried a basket into the mountains, and whatever we brought back, I gave him a small portion as payment. The rest was mine. The only difference was that I also started preparing one meal for him every day. I don't know if I've gained or lost out. Adults have big appetites. How much more food do I need to save up so he can make it through the winter? 2. But he's such a useful laborer. If he starves to death, where am I going to find someone this useful next year? The moment this thought crossed my mind, I froze. It hasn't been long since I left my adoptive father, and I'm already thinking about exploiting others. Indeed, his earlier preparing for a rainy day wasn't without reason. I paused for a moment, blinked away the moisture in my eyes, and then brushed it aside. Forget it. At most, I'll prepare his share of rations. 2. As for the past, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Thinking of this, my expression relaxed a little, frowning in thought. I didn't notice that. While I was looking down, someone's gaze had been lingering on me as my expression changed. His eyes couldn't hide his concern, and only when my expression relaxed did he let out a sigh of relief. Unaware, I closed my eyes, planning the direction I would take tomorrow. Not long after, a medicinal pouch was thrown into the nearby fire. The scent of medicine filled the enclosed space, and I, who had been asleep, sank into a deep slumber. Only then did the young man dare to approach. Just like the previous few nights, he cautiously sat beside me, tenderly touching my delicate features that still bore some resemblance to his own. In his mind, he replayed the scenes from these past days. I had desperately tried to hoard food, a little greedily, wanting to keep it all for myself. Yet my heart softened, with worry that he might go hungry. Old Edward had been observing for several days, fuming, with anger, and in the end, he couldn't hold back. Are you unable to find her? That's why you've ended up like this. The silver-haired, elegant young man had a gentle gaze, and an exceptionally soft expression as he hummed in agreement. Hey! Old man thought your sweetheart was gone. Yian folks are all about love and romance. He also thought to himself about what he had read in storybooks. Losing a loved one could turn your hair white overnight, and he had just witnessed it firsthand. Little did he know this loved one was not the kind he had imagined. Old Edward clicked his tongue twice. Curious. You don't look like someone who can't afford a meal. That very night after waking up, he pulled out a large wad of cash. But this little child is so malnourished and physically depleted. He had just said this when he saw the young man's expression under the firelight. Cold and murderous. Old Edward coughed and wisely shut his mouth. But the young man spoke up. I didn't know. When she was born. What the hell? That year, right after the war ended, I passed by this place and remembered that my old white nurse's hometown was nearby. So I dropped by for a visit. Old Edward's eyes lit up. Seems like I get it now. Looking at the age of the doll, it's really uncertain whether liberation had even happened back then. What kind of family could afford to hire a wet nurse in those days? They must have been schemed against. And this young man, with his attitude, doesn't seem like the type to easily bend to others. Well, a year after I left, my grandmother at home only learned of her existence after receiving a letter from the wet nurse. At that time, I was no longer in the country and had gone to the battlefield in the east. Grandmother was elderly, and she was too young to endure the hardships of travel. After weighing the options, grandmother sent some money to the wet nurse, asking her to take good care of her until I returned. Later, the situation changed. My grandmother, who had lived a life of privilege, couldn't bear the sudden change in the family circumstances, and passed away. We lost contact with this side for several months. By the time I finally returned, she had already gained a foster father. Old Edward was speechless. This is really hard to say. At that time, she had developed a bond with her wet nurse, and the wet nurse had raised her very well. Delicate, fair-skinned, tender, and utterly adorable. I have a job, so even if I take her back, I can only leave her at home and find someone to take care of her. Old Edward nodded in understanding. In that case, it would indeed be better to temporarily foster the child here once the child is a bit older. It would be safer to take her back. That was exactly what the young man had in mind. He ultimately didn't take the person away, only leaving behind a jade pendant that could prove James' family identity. Since then, money and packages have been sent every month. He was genuinely busy, sometimes not even sure if he was in the country or not. After the founding of the People's Republic, it was not easy for overseas scholars who had completed their studies and wanted to return to contribute. He has a special background. Although the James family is gone, many of his former friends and acquaintances are scattered overseas, and quite a few of them are thriving. After returning, he was transferred to his current apartment specifically for this purpose. When he gets busy, he really can't focus on anything else apart from sending money in packages. There's nothing else he can do. The death of the wet nurse was unexpected, but he still understood David Jackson, his childhood friend, who valued his reputation. Although he might not be particularly attentive, he would never do anything to ruin his reputation. In the letter David Jackson sent him, he wrote about contributing earnestly to the country and promised to take good care of Anna. Along with the letter, there was also a photograph. The little girl, following the trend, wore simple clothes. Though she had grown taller and thinner, she wore a big bright smile on her face. Her radiant and spirited appearance clearly showed that she was adapting well. So, he continued to send money. He only thought that in a few months, after finishing the tasks at hand, he would take some time off and come to see her again. If possible, I'll switch to a less demanding position later and just bring him back to raise him by my side. But he truly never expected. Unexpected events often come even faster. The young man gently touched the face of the little one, who was fast asleep, his expression full of pity and regret. Old Edward sighed. No wonder there's nothing wrong with her throat. She probably encountered something and got stuck in a dead end, which is why she doesn't want to speak. You should spend more time with her. From now on, she's still young. Once she figures things out or forgets what happened in the past, she'll be fine. The young man's eyes darkened with a pained expression. And Anna, is my background really so unacceptable to you? That letter once again appeared before his eyes. All the things David Jackson had instilled in him. How he was born, with sin. How he must toil, and labor to atone. How money corrupts. Old Edward didn't know what he was thinking, but he was a little curious. You've already come looking for me. When do you plan to acknowledge me? The young man's expression faltered slightly. He couldn't help but touch the still warm face beneath his hand again. Just wait a little longer. Anna was already starting to feel closer to him. Wait until time fades the old memories, and her mindset shifts a bit, thinking back to the despair he felt just days ago, when he couldn't find her anywhere. He had plenty of patience to wait. Any possible what-ifs. He couldn't bear them. Old Edward didn't understand. But it didn't matter. With 2 more people around, he was no longer alone in the mountains, only able to talk to the cows and mules, and he was quite happy seeing that they planned to stay for a long time. He started sharing his experience. It gets cold here. The heavy snow in winter can block the mountain pass. So don't even think about coming or going. You'll need to prepare early. The little girl keeps moving food into the den, but she doesn't have winter clothes. Forget about winter. She only has 1 set of clothes to change into. Sam James nodded. He was thinking about that, too. When this stable was first built, only the best materials were used. But after all these years, it has fallen into disrepair, and spending the winter sleeping in a haystack isn't a long-term solution. However, if he were to suggest moving somewhere else to his daughter, he's afraid he might scare her away. He needs to think it over carefully. I had no idea what happened that night, and life went on as usual for the next until the work in the fields was mostly done. More and more people began heading into the mountains, and it took me longer to fill my basket again. The food stored in the shed is enough to last me until spring. So, I turned my attention to the firewood. The white-haired young man didn't know if he was just bored or if he was looking for something in the mountains. Whenever I went into the mountains, he would definitely follow. Sometimes he was lucky enough to catch 1 or 2 wild rabbits or pheasants. Every time he stewed the meat, he would share half a bowl with me and old Edward. I knew it was hush money to keep me from talking, and I ate it with a clear conscience. In my previous life, I hadn't eaten a single bite of meat for over a decade. In this life, I'm only 6 years old and already getting to eat meat so soon, and I can even have my fill at every meal. I'm quite satisfied with my current life. Moreover, I even began to develop some aspirations. I wanted to eat my fill, and on top of that, I hoped to be able to eat meat. Having set this goal for myself, I started observing the abandoned traps I encountered in the mountains, and tried to imitate them. The white-haired young man seemed to understand my intentions, and occasionally offered a few words of guidance at critical moments. Just like that, my traps started yielding results on our dining table. It wasn't exactly a rotation of chicken, duck, fish, and meat, but every now and then, we began to see some meat dishes. Life suddenly seemed to have a purpose. One day, as the sky was just beginning to lighten, and I was still half asleep, I heard a rough, angry shout outside the door. "Sam James, you say it again. What the hell do you want to do?" As the voice rang out, it was accompanied by a loud bang. It was the sound of a hand slamming heavily onto it. I felt as if the whole world shook along with it. But what concerned me more was the name this person had called out at the beginning. Then I heard the clear, pleasant male voice that had been by my ear all these days. Hey, take it easy. Let's go. Let's talk in the car." In the car. My baby is still asleep. The sound behind me faded into the distance, and I could no longer hear the last few words. So, he was Sam James. My mind went completely blank, and I lost the ability to think. In that moment, I thought about many things. Yet, it felt as if I had thought of nothing. In my mind, one moment I see him in his past life, holding me in front of the Jeep, with tears streaming down his face. The next I see all the smiling faces he's shown these past few days. But then those 16 years of hardship, rising early and working late, living a simple and frugal life from his past flood back and take over. I forced a stiff smile and curled myself into a ball. He is Sam James after all. The Sam James who never wanted me in this life or the last. All the warmth during this period has gradually been tainted by frost. Meanwhile, inside the Jeep, Sam James interrupted the old leader's attempt to lecture him. "Uncle, tell me, what else can I do besides stepping down?" His hands trembling, he pulled out that letter to show him, his emotions somewhat out of control. "I've been following our team around since I was 14, these 15 years, through gunfire and rain of bullets, through mountains of swords and seas of flames, both on the front lines and behind enemy lines. When have I ever said no? Now the world is at peace, and the age is clear and bright. After serving my country with loyalty, all I want is to live peacefully with my daughter. Is that such an unforgivable sin? My daughter is 6 years old. She is the pearl of the James family. But damn it, she hasn't had a single good day in her life. Who am I fighting out here for? Who the hell do you think I'm doing this for?" Sam James raised a hand to cover his re-ened eyes, calming down a bit before continuing. "I'm sorry. She's only 6 years old. She still refuses to speak. She almost didn't want to live anymore." The old leader, whose gaze was fixed on the line, "This world is too bitter. She has already been here." "Remain silent," Sam James said. "No more," and took back the thin letter. He silently opened the car door and got out, seeing his friend and colleague waiting by the car. With a complicated expression, he patted him on the shoulder. "Thanks. Did you bring the stuff?" The other person didn't say anything else, and opened the trunk to start, unloading a few thick quilts, several military coats, and some miscellaneous items packed in baskets along with 2 sacks of grain. Sam James quickly composed himself and led the others to carry the items back. He first glanced at his daughter, who was still sound asleep, with her eyes closed, and his expression softened again. And again, the Jeep came quickly and left just as fast. Old Edward remained as quiet as a mouse the whole time, only now whispering to Sam James, "What do you do? And why was that guy so full of fire and fury just now?" Sam James ignored him. Old Edward knew how to save his own skin, and wisely shut his mouth. Sam James, however, tossed a notebook over to him. "You might find this useful. Consider it my thanks. Thank you for bringing his daughter back. Thank you for being willing to give his daughter a place to stay. Thank you for treating his daughter's leg." Old Edward instantly understood what he meant. He waved his hand. "It really wasn't a big deal. This little one is truly endearing. She brings her own food when she eats, and she does the work at hand, without hesitation. He saved her, and didn't she repay him with something as soon as she could?" However, before he could say anything, the moment old Edward saw what was in his hand, he immediately hugged it tightly. This old man won't stand on ceremony. The notes of a renowned physician from the previous dynasty. This is truly a treasure. I slept very restlessly, and I can no longer recall what I dreamed about. When I opened my eyes again, the sky was already bright. It felt as if the shadows in my heart had been chased away as well. It was only then that I noticed my straw nest had changed. Now the straw nest was covered with soft bedding. I was nestled in the bedding, still covered by a military overcoat. I buried my face in the coat's furry collar and carefully rubbed against it. "Are you awake?" Sam James's clear, gentle voice came through. I instinctively rubbed my eyes. Sam James had been looking back and forth several times, feeling uneasy inside. Only when he saw her react did he feel a bit more at ease. "Let's rest for today. It's already late morning, and we won't get far if we head into the mountains now. We should tidy up this place to prepare for winter." I nodded mechanically, then realized something was off, and buried my head deeper into my coat. Sam James chuckled, thinking I was just shy. He seemed to remember something, and explained the reason for the sudden appearance of the items. "I had a bit of trouble, and have nowhere to go for now. These were brought over by my friend last night." It was true that he had some trouble. The letter sent to the police station, and the money and vouchers inside were seen by so many people since he had been withdrawing that much money every month. It was only natural that he would be investigated, but it wasn't serious enough to be too bad. His monthly allowance plus mission bonuses amounted to 200 or 300, which was a fixed amount, but the process over there would take some time. During this period, he would have to be suspended from duty, so he decided to stay here. I blinked, And even after the person left to attend to other matters, I was still lost in thought. I also thought about the letter and the money order I had sent to the police station. Was it because of those that something happened to him in his previous life? This man was still driving a car and full of ambition even 10 years later. But now he had already turned gray, with worry at a young age, reduced to living in a thatched hut and eating wild vegetable paste and sweet potatoes just like us. If I had been a bit more tactful when I sent the letter, would I not have harmed him? Apart from not acknowledging me and having a less than ideal background, there was actually nothing wrong with him. Even though he didn't acknowledge me, he still paid child support. It's just that my adoptive father didn't want me to go astray. So, the money wasn't used on me. I huddled in my coat for a long while, still feeling that compared to how Sam James treated me, I had wronged him more. I didn't know what to do. So, I could only pretend to know nothing. In the days that followed, I tried my best to gather supplies according to my previous routine. Sam James stayed by my side as usual. It seemed as if everything was still the same as before. But I knew something was different. I used to be able to easily ignore his existence. But now I want to hold my head high. And sometimes even breathing feels uncomfortable. When preparing extra meals for him, I unconsciously pick out the better ones for him. And I can't help but worry about whether he's eating enough or if he's uncomfortable with the food. My unusual behavior, of course, did not go unnoticed by Sam James. But no matter how clever he is, he couldn't figure out what I was concerned about, nor did he know that I had guessed his identity just from a name. He actually thought this was a sign that our relationship had grown closer. Sam James is best at pushing his luck. He cut bamboo to make shelves and arranged my stockpiled food along with the supplies others had sent him by category on the shelves. Our belongings ended up mixed together like this. The shelf took up quite a bit of space, and our makeshift straw beds were moved together later on. When I slept under my coat at night, half of his large quilt was added on top of it. As winter set in, heavy snow sealed off the mountains, and the entrance to the valley was buried under waist-high snow drifts. We huddled in the mountain hollow, waiting out the winter. Only, when old Edward fed the cows and mules each day did we lend a hand, and suddenly time became very abundant. Old Edward and Sam James couldn't stay idle. They took out books to teach me how to read. I suddenly remembered the letter I had written to the police station, having forgotten that I shouldn't be literate at this point. In my previous life, I had never attended school. I was able to learn some characters, because the production brigade made it mandatory to attend the literacy classes organized by the Educated Youth Office. I followed along and studied there for a while. Fortunately, I have a good memory, and I could basically remember everything that was taught. That's how I managed to write a letter, though since I didn't know all the characters, it was filled with circles, opinion, and drawings which actually fit my persona as a little kid. I zoned out for a moment, and the two of them had already clearly divided the tasks. Old Edward had medical books, while Sam James rummaged through the package his comrade had brought him and pulled out a criminal law book. I glanced at it a couple of times, and old Edward chuckled mischievously. How afraid are they that you'll get into trouble sending you something like this? Sam James was also helpless. It was probably because his friend found out that he had rushed to David Jackson's place some time ago and almost killed him. My traditional Chinese medicine class and criminal law class have started. They teach their lessons on schedule every day, and I listen whenever I feel like it. If you show a bit more interest with your eyes or expression, they'll share a little more. If not, they don't push it. That's pretty much their attitude. Old Edward's traditional Chinese medicine class focuses more on daily health and how to handle minor ailments. Sam James' criminal law class leans more toward understanding which methods to use in certain situations to fully protect yourself. He even taught me a few self-defense moves in between. They say this is just a way to pass the time. I'm not really 6 years old. I know this is for my own good, having never been treated kindly by others. I felt quite uncomfortable at first. I pretended not to care, but in reality, I awkwardly pricked up my ears to listen. Later on, I became even more serious and would even take out the paper and pens I had bought earlier to take notes. That day, I suddenly heard a sentence: justifiable defense resulting in the death of an unlawful aggressor does not constitute a crime. My pupils dilated, and, without waiting for him to tell any accompanying anecdotes, I immediately stood up and rushed over to grab the book. Sam James was confused, but still allowed me to do so. The moment those words clearly fell into my sight, my teeth were faintly trembling. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Sam James had been paying attention to me, and quickly asked. I stiffly shook my head. I rarely gave a response, but Sam James couldn't feel happy about it. However, he was afraid that asking too much would make me resentful, so he had to restrain himself and patiently recount the cases he had in mind. I composed myself and listened very attentively, but precisely because I was listening so carefully, I became certain that in my previous life, I had indeed accidentally killed someone. However, it was in self-defense. I was innocent. I pursed my lips, and tears instantly streamed down my face. Sam James was startled. He didn't care about anything else, and immediately pulled me onto his lap to comfort me. The more he comforted me, the more wronged I felt. I bit my lower lip hard, my clenched fists digging my nails into my palms. In my previous life, I lost my life. Because of this, in my previous life, Sam James also, because of this, accidentally hit and killed me with his car. Uncle Edward. Uncle Edward. Sam James held me tightly in his arms, using one hand to pry open my mouth, and placing his own hand inside, while the other hand firmly grasped both of my hands, unwilling to let me harm myself any further. At the same time, he didn't forget to call out to old Edward, who was gathering fodder outside. I turned my head, buried it in his embrace, and let myself cry until I was gasping for breath. How could we have been so ignorant? How could I have been so ignorant? I was the one who personally delivered my own life under the wheels of my biological father. Old Edward was startled by the scene. He quickly said, "Let her cry it out. She can't hold it in any longer. She needs to cry." Sam James had no idea what was really behind my tears. He racked his brains, sweat beading on his forehead. "Good girl. Don't be scared, Dad." "No. I'm here. I've always been here." I couldn't hold back any longer, and burst into loud sobs. Sam James was heartbroken beyond words, but old Edward was being a real killjoy. "Cry it out. Cry it out. It's good to let it out." Yet both Sam James and I acted as if he didn't exist. I continued to cry, and Sam James continued to feel sorry for me and comfort me. Sam James patiently stayed with me the whole time, allowing me to vent. Only, when I had calmed down, did he bring a damp cloth and gently wipe my face. I felt uncomfortable and tried to dodge, struggling to get down, but couldn't break free. So I just let him beat. Seeing my embarrassment, he ruffled my hair. "Were you scared? Don't be afraid. If you don't like it, I won't tell such stories anymore." But I still didn't want to speak, so I just raised my hand to cover his mouth. Sam James was pleasantly surprised by my sudden closeness, and his expression instantly softened. All right. I won't say anything. We still have some hawthorns we stocked up on earlier. How about I make you some candied hawthorns?" Candied hawthorns? I've never tried it before. I looked up at him, my eyes conveying the message clearly. "All right. Approved." Sam James instantly broke into a smile. He didn't put me down either, just carried me over to the shelf where the food was stored, rummaging around to find the hawthorn berries. Then he took out the white sugar someone had given him and called old Edward to help wash the hawthorn. He lit the fire, skewered the hawthorn, and even, when boiling the sugar syrup, he held me with one hand, never putting me down. I felt a little embarrassed, and also a little reluctant to get down. By the time the candied hawthorn was ready, the sweet and sour aroma seemed to already fill the air, and I could no longer remember to think about anything else. Throughout the winter, Sam James and I grew more and more comfortable with each other. When he hugged me impulsively, I no longer struggled and even remained quite calm. He also made a variety of delicious treats for me: candied hawthorn sticks, candy jam, sugar roasted chestnuts, rice cakes, juju paste yum cakes, and sponge cakes as the new year approaches. from the lava porridge of the lava festival to the New Year's Eve dinner of the spring festival. And then the dumplings on the first day of the lunar year. And the dumplings on the lantern festival. The winter was long, but I lived it fully and vibrantly. I also read the entire criminal law book over and over again. As the new year began, the ice and snow melted away. Sam James didn't know how he negotiated with the village, but, with my tacit consent, I now renamed Anna James was independently registered in this village. The village also allowed him to allocate land in this mountain hollow to build a courtyard for me. Sam James said that on the surface, he had to live at Old Edward's place, so the courtyard could only be built in my name. He asked me to reserve a room for him so that he could sneak over to stay at night and enjoy some good meals, which he considered a privilege. I instinctively thought his situation was similar to Old Edward's. When the roads were blocked in winter at Old Edward's place, it was one thing, but during other times villagers would come and go, leading cattle and mules, delivering fodder and hauling manure, whether it was preparing better meals or stockpiling food and mountain goods. It was ultimately inconvenient. My guilt toward him resurfaced, and I nodded without hesitation. And in the end, I was the one who benefited from this. By settling in the village, I could take on tasks like gathering pigweed and cutting grass for the cattle. I would also be entitled to a share of the village's distributed rations, which would secure my livelihood. I wasn't really a child, so I could also venture into the mountains and forest to search for food. When the time came, I could even look out for him a bit more. Sam James had already fallen to this point. He couldn't keep relying on his friend, who might or might not come, and whose arrival was uncertain, to get by after moving into the new courtyard. Before I could figure out how to live my life next, I noticed Sam James occasionally casting anxious glances toward the mountain pass exit. I thought of his friend, who hadn't shown up in a long time, and sighed with melancholy. When I can only cook, I give him more food to fill him up and distract him a bit. Sam James, who had no idea what I was thinking, was speechless. Anna loves me even more. It was still the dim light of dawn when a jeep arrived in front of the small courtyard. I was half asleep, hearing a middle-aged man, who was trying to lower his voice, but still ended up shouting hoarsely as he slammed the table. "Say that again, you bastard." Sam James frowned. "Keep it down." The old leader remembered that someone was still sleeping inside, and his expression stiffened a bit. He was a military officer transferred to a civilian position. He was well aware of the volume of his voice, which had been honed by artillery fire on the battlefield. So, he simply stood up and walked further away. Seeing Sam James follow, he lowered his voice again. "Aren't you going? Are you thinking I'm discussing this with you? This is an order. As long as you haven't stepped down yet, you have to listen to me." Sam James didn't get to where he is by being easily intimidated. Staying in that position is tough, but stepping down is a simple matter. It's just that he had just found his daughter and wasn't at ease. So, he kept delaying. He heard his old leader's voice filled with frustration and disappointment. Others retire because they've made contributions, but their health no longer allows it. "What about you? You're deserting. I won't allow such a disgrace under my command." Sam James originally wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. The old leader still understood Sam James, and he remembered something. "Aren't you doing this for your daughter? Your daughter is so principled. If she finds out later, she'll definitely disown you." Sam James remained silent. "Let me think about it a little more." He thought of that letter again. If, when he appeared before his daughter again, he could be a great father, with a shining positive image. The old leader knew he had relented, and then revealed the specific details. "This matter truly cannot be done without you during an operation before the new year." The other side somehow got wind of the information and prepared in advance. Our support team managed to desperately get a few experts onto the ship, but they themselves didn't make it back. They are still being held in that lab in M country. Sam James understood what he meant. The whereabouts of those people are still unknown, and it's unclear whether they are alive or dead in this situation. If we go through official channels to negotiate, who knows how many of them will be left after being tortured. We have to take the special route and get him up first. Sam James is undoubtedly a suitable candidate. He is a member of the James family. Although the James family has no one left, their former close friends and old acquaintances now hold considerable influence over there. And the James family still has some other connections of their own. Of course, it's not like he's the only option. If I really wanted to get in touch, I could still reach some patriotic friends. But then again, isn't Sam James already here? After saying this, Sam James didn't respond one way or the other, and turned back into the courtyard. I sat on the doorstep, propping my chin in my hands, staring unblinkingly at Sam James, who was clearly in a bad mood just now. I was sleeping groggily. I vaguely heard something about taking Sam James somewhere, which startled me and made me rush out immediately. It wasn't until I saw the two of them standing together and speaking calmly, not escorting him away, that I could finally sit still and wait for him. Sam James crouched in front of me and held me in his arms. I rarely obediently let him do as he pleased. Sam James smiled gently. "Why did you wake up so early? Oh dear, you're so cold. You're not waiting for me to put your coat on for you, are you?" I instantly felt embarrassed. Not at all. Sam James carried me into the house, grabbed a coat, and put it on me. He ruffled my hair, made me a cup of malted milk, and even extravagantly rolled up pure white flour noodles, topped them with a poached egg, and sprinkled them with finely minced meat. I stayed quiet, without making a sound. Sam James wanted to say something, but ultimately said nothing, only looking at me intently, unable to tear his eyes away. I tried my best to act as if nothing was wrong. Finally, Sam James spoke again. "I have to leave for a while." I lowered my head, without looking up, but tears uncontrollably fell. Sam James still left. It is said that he went to resolve his previous issues. When I come back, I can stay here steadily and peacefully. Before leaving, he took all the money and tickets from the old leader and the yen driver and gave them to me. He rambled on, with many instructions, and even made a promise with me that, when he returned, he would tell me a big secret, and asked me not to get angry as sudden longing arose in my heart. Could it be? Is it what I'm thinking? But I didn't dare to ask, only agreed to wait for him, holding on to a hope I didn't even dare to imagine. I restrained my worries about him and lived my life well. Now I have my own yard. There is the food that Sam James had delivered after you left. There are the clothes and shoes that have been fully furnished. And there is the oversized package filled with various candies, pastries, and chocolates reportedly handpicked for me by Sam James himself. I treasure them carefully. I only eat a little. When I miss him at night, the sweetness blooming in my mouth is just like he's still by my side. I try my best to make these moments last a little longer. I still team up with my neighbor, old Edward, every day, just like before. Sharing food, I followed Sam James' advice and didn't venture deep into the mountains anymore. But I still took on the job of gathering PG'd in the village to earn some work points. The season, when the locust trees bloom. I remembered the old locust tree in the neighboring village, the one I had secretly discovered in my previous life. If I don't go to pick them this year, I'm afraid they'll all go to waste. My reluctance to let the food go to waste won out. And in the end, I went, not surprisingly, and yet still a surprise. I saw my adoptive father, David Jackson, again. In my previous life, he had always stood tall and straight, dressed simply, but neatly and decently. Now, he still tried to stand upright, but the collar and cuffs of his worn-out clothes were grimy and blackened along the way. I heard people calling out to him, "David, I'm heading to my in-laws' place to pick up my wife. Can you finish the work in the field for me? David, there's a patch in my vegetable garden that will be out of season if we don't plant it soon. Can you come help me turn the soil tonight? David, could you help me?" As expected, my foster father agreed, with a cheerful smile. My gaze fell on his leg, which for some reason was limping as he walked, and I sighed. Probably like me, he got hurt by a hoe. Being helpful and selflessly dedicated is a good thing. But, without me, why doesn't he know how to take good care of himself and cherish his own health? However, my adoptive father has such a personality that can't tolerate the slightest flaw. Compared to these setbacks in life, I was even more unwilling to appear before him, causing him to be tormented mentally every moment. I took a different path to avoid him, only to run into my aunt, who was heading out to work in my previous life. She had already left to join the army by this time, and despite always being glamorous, she was now uncharacteristically plain and simple. In my memory, the proud and beautiful little cousin was dragging a large basket as she chased after the older children. And the uncle, who should have been thriving and steadily rising in his career, was now carrying a hoe covered in dust. I was surprised for a moment. What is this? Is my uncle back to visit relatives? Maybe my existence has been discovered by my aunt. And the others? Uncle was puzzled. Who is it? He's even fairer and more handsome than our girl. Aunt looked over and then shook her head. I don't know. Looks unfamiliar. Maybe a relative from the city. I froze for a moment and instinctively lowered my head. My originally thin chicken claw-like hands had in just the past half-year become plump, fair, and tender, even, with little dimples. I suddenly laughed. This is actually pretty good. In the small courtyard nestled in the mountain hollow of the neighboring village, my life continues to follow its usual routine. Gathering pigweed, digging for wild vegetables, drying vegetables, and mushrooms, and every day I team up with old Edward, also collecting some firewood along the way. Flowers bloom and wither, and the leaves begin to turn yellow. It's harvest time in the mountains again. I'm thinking of going into the mountains to stock up on food. Last year's candied hawthorn berries and candied Chinese yum beans were delicious. I should learn to make them myself. My expectations for Sam James are suppressed and treasured in the deepest corner of my heart, untouched and cherished on a very ordinary evening. The courtyard gate was pounded with a loud bang. I have been restless for several days, and now my heart is even more uneasy. I hurriedly got up to open the door and knocked over the table and stools. At the door were several unfamiliar people in police uniforms. My face instantly turned pale as I tried to stay calm. Is he in trouble? Or is it to have me collect his body? With his background, how could I have believed that he would definitely be fine after leaving? I was anxious, opening my mouth, but unable to make a sound, tears instantly welling up in my eyes. Several comrades are here to take you to see him. Old Edward spoke up, with a grave expression at just the right moment. Yes, we'll take you to see him. The police officer didn't know much to begin with, and I was only 6 or 7 years old, afraid I couldn't explain things clearly, so I simply stopped saying more. We switched from a 3-wheeled motorcycle to a car, then to a train, and finally to a speeding jeep. It felt like a relay the whole way, with waves of people taking turns to escort us. Less than 3 hours had passed before I was taken to a hospital ward somewhere in the capital. At the entrance of the ward, a group of weary-looking, pale-faced young and middle-aged men, some with arms and slings and bandages, exuding a scholarly air, looked anxious. The middle-aged man in the suit, who had visited the small courtyard along with the upright figures around him, also wore solemn expressions. Seeing me, the middle-aged man opened his mouth. This time, he wasn't originally on the list. It was him who insisted on adding him only if he goes. The possibility of success is the greatest, and the required manpower, material resources, financial resources, and time are the least. He ultimately only sighed. The doctor said his condition is critical. He paused for a moment. He might not make it, but I know even if it's the last time, he would definitely want to see you. He was an outstanding comrade. He also wanted you to be proud of him. Don't blame him. My mind was empty, unable to take in a single word. I staggered and pushed aside the person blocking my way, rushing into the hospital room. The person on the hospital bed was wrapped in bandages from head to toe, blood seeping through, with no part of their body left, and scathed. I wanted to hold him, but I didn't dare touch him. Instead, I carefully grasped his uninjured hand and covered my own eyes. Someone seemed about to say something, but they were stopped by another person. Captain James only has tonight unless he wakes up, but the doctor said the chances of him waking up are almost 0. After this, there is no after this. While he still has a breath left, the one he most wants to hear and see is this little child right here. The hospital room was as silent as death. The clock ticked away, each second seemingly marking the fading life of Sam James. It had been over a year since I last spoke. I thought I had forgotten how to speak, but in this moment, it all felt like instinct. "Are you leaving me, too?" I murmured softly, tears already uncontrollable. "You're leaving, too? How could you? I want to call you Dad. I want to have a home. How can you leave now? And wait for me? I'll go. With you. Okay." My emotions gradually spiraled out of control. "Why? Why did you give birth to me only to abandon me? You still haven't told me why. How could you die? You promised me that I should wait for you." I broke down crying. "Please wake up. I beg you. Wake up. I don't want you to die. I'm scared. Dad. I'm scared. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone." Okay. It felt like a long time had passed, yet it also seemed like only a moment. Okay. Low. Almost like a breath. I looked up through tear-filled eyes. The person lying silently on the hospital bed had opened their eyes at some point. Though his body couldn't move, his gaze was gentle. He curved his eyebrows, still as handsome as before, and tried hard to lift the corners of his mouth. Though speaking was difficult, he made every effort to enunciate clearly. "All right. Be good now. Don't cry." He paused for a moment, then continued. "Don't be afraid. Dad is back. Dad will always be with Anna from now on. Don't be afraid." I stared at him blankly. The people surrounding us, who had been unable to bear watching the scene of life and death, suddenly snapped back to reality. "Doctor! Doctor! Hurry! Hurry! She's awake! She's awake!" I was quickly pushed to the corner. Sam James let the doctors do their work, but his gaze remained fixed on me. I felt a bit embarrassed for once, and rubbed my face absent-mindedly. I thought, great. Sam James was discharged from the hospital more than a month later. During that time, he was critically ill twice, but managed to pull through. With his strong will, I stayed directly in the hospital room. He couldn't bear to have me leave his sight, and I didn't want to leave either. No one mentioned what had happened before him. Now, it was enough that we could be there for each other. Sam James' body requires long-term rest and recovery. For quite some time, he won't even be able to live a normal life, and his former department is no longer suitable for him. We stayed in the capital for another half-year until Sam James had recovered enough to barely walk. And then we returned to the small mountain village where my household registration was located to recuperate. From time to time, Sam James' former comrades, colleagues, or those he had saved would take turns visiting, and packages from all over the country never stopped arriving. I didn't know the specifics of his situation, only occasionally seeing him and old Edward whispering over an ancient book. And, whenever outsiders came to visit, Sam James always struggled to get out of bed, forcing himself to appear as if nothing was wrong. But in reality, whether at home or out in the fields, up the mountains, or into the woods, he always accompanied me. He took care of all my daily needs: food, clothing, shelter, and transportation, as if trying to make up for all the past neglect, placing the focus of his life entirely on me. The bamboo, straw, and wood crops he made for me filled the entire shelf. Slingshots, crossbows, hidden weapons, kites, bamboo dragonflies, sandbags, shuttlecocks, and spinning tops. He played with me through each and every one. He also told me stories and shared life lessons. Even my quirky habit of hoarding food at home, he enthusiastically joined in. Sam James secretly told me, "Given the current situation, let's just stay here peacefully for now. Father and son, don't worry about the future. Last time I was abroad, I ran into your uncle from our family. He's still alive and doing quite well for himself now. An elder brother is like a father. He will take care of us from now on. I'm not worried. Just 8 years old." I walked briskly, my small hand held in his broad one, as the dappled sunlight filtered through the trees and fell upon us. Now I am the happiest person in the world. I have the best dad in the world. I feel a bit annoyed. I didn't speak. Absurd. Wow. That's not it at all. I understand. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you like this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.